Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Just Shelve It. My name is Jesse Arnold, and this is Shooting the Shelf, my weekly show where I get to talk to someone else in the toy collecting or otherwise collecting community, and just have a chat for a while. And I'm really excited about tonight's guest, although I did very poorly prepare myself and lost track of time as I was cleaning up parts. But welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining in. My schedule is going to be a little different over the next couple of weeks, where I've got a guest on Saturday and Sunday next week. And then I think 2 weeks, I'll have two people on Sunday, one in the earlier part of the day and one in the evening. So schedule is going to be a little different going into the holiday season. So with that said, let's not waste any time. Give a warm digital welcome to my guest tonight, the one and only Matt Rodriguez.
Hello, Jesse. How are you, bud?
I'm good. How are you?
I am wonderful. I'm excited to be here. I've heard good things about the show. Unfortunately, I'm a little unprepared, but I can try to fake it as best as I can. So
there's literally nothing to prepare. We're just talking.
Then we're good.
I like your choice of setting, since we're going to be probably talking some X-Men in pretty good detail tonight.
Yeah, I've got a couple posters up. So
yeah, Wolverine's crotch right behind you. That's perfect.
My favorite part of Wolverine.
I mean, who? What? Never mind. I can't phrase that properly. Nice. Is that the Age of X one, or House of X?
House of X. Yep.
Very cool. Well, before we get into the X-Men talk, I know I met you through Sean and Matt on the not Podcasters Universe. Oh my gosh, I'm even getting my podcast mixed up. Wow. Sorry, guys. Legends of Grayskull podcast.
Those guys are going to be offended.
They don't watch this.
Yeah.
No, from Legends of Grayskull, where I get to host them on Offworld, and we've done a couple shows over there with them, and got to meet you at PowerCon this year, and didn't really get to hang out with too much at Legion's Con a couple weeks ago, because that was just an absolutely crazy weekend. But
it was. We both had our separate booths at separate parts of the room, so obviously hanging out and chatting too much wasn't in the cards. But how'd you do there?
I did pretty good. Other than coming home and missing a week of work because I got COVID. I'd say I did pretty good. I have, other than getting sick, I have no complaints, really. I thought it was a really great show. It was really fun seeing everybody, and just the nonstop fervor of the show was great. How about you?
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. I was kind of showing off some of the stuff I'm working on right now, and so it was cool to just see kind of feedback and people's opinions and thoughts on the toy line and everything, and so it was really good. It was really kind of just a lot of confirmation, going down the right track with what we're working on right now. So yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk about that a minute. I got one of your early I don't know the correct terminology for this. I haven't painted them yet, but I'm going to.
You know what? That's just a resin print. So that one was done. That's the Royal Guard, the Stegosaur version, and that's the early one. That was it's in the. I'm terrible as far as action figure scales. Like what scale? It's the 3 3/4, but that's the 3 3/4 size. So what's the scale? Like, how do you say that scale? Like
this one looks more like it's like the classic Ninja Turtle, so like more like the 4 or 5 inch.
Okay. So the reason why
they're bigger, so they're
bigger than the 3 3/4
gotcha
regular size figures. So
so
that was done. Honestly, I couldn't tell you specifically, but over 12 years ago.
Wow.
Back in the day, before all of this stuff was available, there'd be websites and forums and chat rooms and stuff like that. And so we happened to be in, early days of He-Man.org. And so meeting a bunch of guys in there and kind of creating stuff and doing different things. Those were sculpted by a guy named Tom Tolman. And he made me a set, and obviously, paid him to make a set, and he wanted a set for himself. And I still have all the original sculpted pieces, because that was all hand sculpted. So it's crazy the detail in doing it old school like that, way before, now everything's digital. So But yeah, that was really cool. So those are resin prints, and they're basically meant to be stactions. You glue them and then you paint them.
That's right.
Um, I think that's the term that's kind of thrown around a little
Yes.
bit. I don't know how official it is, but yeah. So
Yeah. So yeah, he's really cool. The Stegosaurus are my favorite, so thank you very much for that. And
yeah,
I'm
no
really
worries, man.
looking forward to the official Horseman sculpted and produced.
Yes.
Uh,
So the wave one called Armies of Ashmore, basically the Defenders of Eden toy line. That was kind of the official launch and the showing off of the action figures themselves. So we've done 3 issues of the comic. We're working on the fourth. And my main dream is I love action figures. I love toys. And so I was awesome when you said, "Hey, do you want to come on?" I was like, "Okay, maybe I can show some of the stuff in the room." And I'm remodeling some stuff, but I could show off a little bit. And but yeah, so we wanted to do a toy line, and so we did the dinosaurs first, the Armies of Ashmore. So those are going to be in ogre scale. If you collect legions, so I think the shortest one is about 8.5 inches, and then the brontosaur is about 11 inches tall. So yeah, we're super, and the feedback was incredible. So I feel nothing but love, and we're just going to keep going on. And so now it comes down to tooling, and then dropping the Kickstarter coming early next year. Hopefully, we want that to drop around February, but we're still working out that stuff.
okay.
And yeah, that's the plans right now. So
Very cool.
yeah.
And obviously, you don't have to get into super detail about it, but like how involved are the Horsemen with that side of it? Is that like all on you to
Yeah,
market, or
that
are
that
they
yeah, that's all on me.
okay?
Essentially, I hired them to do the sculpting side of this project because like I said, those original ones were that small,
Hmm.
and then even when we did some kind of digital scanning and we kind of made them bigger, and all of the detail was lost. And then because I had such good feedback just on kind of the concept over the past couple of years, talked to my wife about it. We just decided, hey, we're going to invest in this, and thankfully and luckily, it's not something that they do very much of at all. But was able to hire their studio to. So that made me feel good that it was one of the projects that they were like, you know what, we like this enough,
Yeah,
and we think it's cool enough that we want to put time into it, and um, but then also they want to get paid too. So I guess there's some of that. But
sure.
normally I think that they do work for some of the bigger companies and stuff like that. So it felt good, and I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed having them on. But yeah, that's kind of it's sculpted by Four Horsemen Studios, and now it's on me to kind of find my way through the next couple stages.
Okay.
But again, within that industry, and even at Legion's Con, having wonderful toy lines, I'm sure you've heard of like Animals of the Warrior Kingdom and the Plunderlings, and those guys involved in launching that stuff. Um, the toy community in general, especially the independent toy community, have been nothing but helpful and caring and encouraging when it comes to this stuff. So I'm a few years behind all of those guys doing their stuff. So it's been awesome kind of watching what they do, and they've been nothing but great to give advice to me with this line. So it's been really cool. It's been really cool.
Awesome. Now you said you're a few years behind as far as the actual toy production, but you said you've had this in the works for at least 12 years.
Oh, I mean, as far as all of the stuff goes, I mean, I don't want to get too like I hope best case scenario, very best case scenario, third, fourth quarter next year, 2023, these are in people's hands. Like that's best case scenario. So I'm not waiting on the Kickstarter to be launched to start the tooling side of it. I'm rolling the dice and crossing the fingers and all the stuff. And so that's the plan. So that's what we're looking into. But as far as this whole concept of Defenders of Eden and the whole world itself, I mean, this stuff's been with me, and I have sketches of stuff, that's 15 years old,
Okay.
yeah, 15 to, yeah. I mean, when I'm trying to do the dates, when I'm like, I graduated in '01 and carry the two and everything. It's been with us for a while. So it's
Awesome.
been, it's been awesome watching it kind of grow and evolve, and seeing kind of what people like about it and everything. So yeah, it's been a good run.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I was initially waiting to read. I have issues 1 and 2 I got from you at PowerCon of Defenders of Eden, and I was waiting to read it with number 3, but I was like, wait, I can't do this show tonight without reading them. So I finally read them this week.
Yeah.
Actually, I read them today.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to have them fresh in my mind tonight. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really like the world you've created here with your team on the book.
Yeah.
The art's really fun. I love it. Feels like, I hope this comes across in the positive way. I mean, it feels like something that, like, an idea that came from the 80s when I was a kid, or early 90s, that like just never happened until now.
Well, yeah, I am no Shakespeare. I mean, when it comes to, and people are like, "Oh, you write comic books," and every time people say that type of stuff, I'm just like, listen, I'm not like some like great writer and anything like that, but yeah, it's definitely, this book, particularly Defenders of Eden, it's kind of just a love letter to what I grew up on and what a lot of us grew up on. And it is family friendly. Like, I have a lot of people that like, hey, I've got an issue for my kid, and or they'll buy issues for family members and stuff like that,
Mhm.
because you don't know what's out on the shelves. And I love adult comics as much as the next person, as far as just content goes. And a lot of the stuff over the past, 10 years or so, even more, have kind of drifted into that whole like superheroes for adults type writing, where it's, you get the Invincibles and the Boys and, all this other stuff where things get a touch darker. And this is just straight up like, I mean, there's literally, okay, so I haven't read issue 3 for a while. And so I was reading part of it, and there's a couple of lines where I just started laughing, because I'm like, it's not, like I said, it's not Shakespeare like I think Lady Merriweather, I don't want to give it away, but she says something in regards to the mechanical man, and
Okay.
she says something about him, and I just laugh. I'm just like, it's so stupid, but like it makes sense. Like, I don't know. We're excited about the world that we created, and as far as the art goes, CJ Edwards, he goes by Bear Show on the org days, and still on Facebook and stuff. But CJ is a phenomenal artist, and he's taken my sketches that I've done, and some of them looks exactly like I thought, but way better. And then some of them, he's like, mate, what if we tweak this here? What if we change this character a little bit there? And it's phenomenal. And then Andrew Kramer, the artist, he's out of South Africa, and he's just, when it comes to art, the coloring, and then also the lettering and everything like that, he's just a phenomenal guy. So it just kind of, everything fell into place with this team, especially on this particular book. So we're just super happy about it. It just, we want to crank out number 4 here soon so we can have a trade. But it wouldn't be anywhere without those guys, because I got sick of a handful of years where I'm showing sketches. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if, and showing this sketchy stuff if, and some people get that and they like to talk to creative people, but for the most part, people are like, oh yeah, you're a weird artsy creative guy. Like, that's cool for you, but it's not till it's a finished product where there's just like, oh, well, this is legit. Like, this is a book, and you were trying to sell this book, you know what I mean? And the quality's there as far as the artwork and everything goes too. So I'm trying to keep up with the writing side of things and make sure like the writing is halfway decent. But the art, for me, the art sells it, itself. So,
it's very, I mean, I work part-time in a comic shop, and this just feels like something I could have picked up off the shelf in the store. It's great. I really enjoyed it. And you keep saying you're no Shakespeare, and it's like, I don't read Shakespeare. I mean, I read it in school, and it is what it is. And oh, I can't believe I just said that. I know he's contributed so much to writing and creativity and everything.
Sure.
Like, I like, you just jump right into the story, and like, you're not taking tons of time to explain everything. You're just kind of like, all right, here it is. Here's the world. Here are these people in the city, and what's going on. And
yeah,
it's just like I said, just reminds me of stuff from like when I was a kid. You just get thrust right into it, and you just accept it for what it is. And it's
right.
It's been really fun.
Well, it's pretend, and that's what part of pretending is that you can just, it's literally turn off this world you're in and just jump into this other place. And for the most part, and now I have to double check myself, but it's like, it's not one of those books where like you're looking to, oh, this parallels the world today, and or this part parallels politically what we're going through or anything. It's like none of that. Like, sure, you can find your own truths and stuff like that. And I was actually talking to somebody earlier about, character versus personality when storytelling is involved. But yeah, you can find that stuff, but it's not like, again, you're jumping into pretend. So just smile and enjoy it and go there with it. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. So that was an interesting comment. The character versus personality. So what was that?
That's something that, and how I like to talk to, and most of my friends know, they're like, oh geez, Matt Rod's on, he's going to be talking Jesse's ear off.
That's why you're here.
That's something that I was actually talking to somebody about the new movie coming out, and it dropped this weekend, Strange World, and we compared it to Lightyear in the sense of, I just have these random thoughts and ideas where it's like, okay, wait a minute, are they confusing a character, like a person, with an actual personality? So what I was equating that to was, with Toy Story, all of the characters, like regardless of like gender specific stuff, they all had a personality, who I am, how I act, how I receive information, all this other stuff. So they have this personality. And it seems like, for me, with Lightyear, I can't remember any of the people. And I'm just like, was that because of their personality? So then I stopped and thought, I'm like, well, did they mix it up? Did they think, oh, cranky old lady, here she is. Hispanic goofy guy, here he is. Granddaughter black chick, here she is. And using these descriptives of a person's, of who they are, and accidentally assuming then that gives them a personality when it doesn't.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so to make sure that you hit on, okay, well, that's cool, the cranky old lady, like she's a cranky old lady, but like, I honestly, and I love the character Buzz Lightyear. Like, I love Toy Story. I think that on a personal level, this could have been this generation's Toy Story as far as what I would have hoped it to be. Now we're getting into cartoon reviews, but anyway, so that's what it came down. That's what it came down to, was the fact that I don't remember these people's names. So why don't I remember their names? Because I easily remember the Toy Story characters' names because I knew their personalities. Sure. These characters, I don't know their personalities. So was that left untouched intentionally or accidentally? And the accidentally would be, oh, well, this is who they are,
They just use the stock like archetype as the entire defining thing of the character, and
let you should assume and know who that is because of that archetype. You know what I mean? So yeah, and that's where, when I saw this, and again, it could be a publicity thing too, but I'm watching the Strange World trailer and I'm like, I don't even know, like, it looks cool. I'm like, but I don't know what it's about. Like, it's like, is it intentionally not telling me anything on purpose? Because I don't know if that's how people receive information. Like, is Disney, Pixar, are they still good enough to do that?
Right.
Because they just put up a picture of a dinosaur and a little kid pretending to be a dog, and everyone's like, we're going, Yeah. And so over the past couple of movies, I'm just like, I don't know if we can just lean into that, oh, people will just show up anymore.
Yeah, like I felt really weirded out when I saw the first, not weirded out, but it just didn't know what to make of the first trailer for Onward.
Yep.
When that first came out, I'm like, all right, this looks really weird for like their style. And then it didn't feel like a Disney Pixar movie in that first trailer.
Yep.
And then, the second trailer came out and they give you a little more about the backstory about like bringing the dad back for the day and everything. I was like, oh, okay. And then I saw the movie and I absolutely loved it. And then the whole world shut down. But like,
yep.
I just thought, that one, it initially didn't capture my attention, but I really liked it. Same with Encanto. The
Yeah.
trailer looked interesting, but I was like, what is this movie even about? And then when I saw it, I was like,
Was Encanto Pixar?
no, I don't think so.
No, I
But
was just curious.
Disney.
I just didn't know. Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it was, and I didn't really get it. And then when I finally saw it, I was like, emotionally floored by it,
Yeah.
in a good way. So,
Yep.
yeah, I haven't seen Lightyear yet, and
great. Oh, geez, I'm giving away. I'm telling you all the characters in it.
that's okay.
Sorry about that.
I haven't heard a lot of like praise for it, so like it wasn't on a must-see list.
Sure.
And I don't want to start a fight, but I've never been a fan of the Toy Story movies, so
okay. No, well, you can't start. I don't think fighting's possible with me. But no, I mean, as far as the Toy Story movies went, like I think that it was one of those right play. I think that it hit the way it did historically because of the right place, right time settings. So you get you get the Toy Story, you get the Matrix, you get the original Avatar, you get these movies that like they came out and something was different technologically, it was innovative in a certain way, and it caught fire and then it blew up. You know what I mean? So I would put it in that listed category of like treading new water.
I won't argue what it brought to storytelling and CG animation, and like,
yeah,
I don't have any ill will toward it. It's just not. It's never been one that I've really attached to. I don't know if it's the score. I can't. Anytime I hear
Randy
Newman songs, I just want to start punching stuff.
What movie were we watching? We like put on an old movie the other day. I don't know if it might have been Major League. I've been watching random old movies with my kids, and all of a sudden I'm just like, Toy Story? Like, because you like hear like the way he plays music and you hear his voice, and I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't Toy Story.
I think you're, if I'm not mistaken, you're a couple years younger than me, if I remember correct.
I'm 39.
Okay, so you're like right around 4 years younger than me. So yeah, I was just a little bit older. Now I still love childish stuff, but for some reason, I think I was just that right age when thinking about my toys coming to life. Not that it wasn't cool, but just the way, like, because that movie felt like it was very kind of like 40s, 50s toys coming to life.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And just something didn't connect for me. And plus the freaky neighbor kid tearing everything apart. I was just like, oh, this is so horrible. And now I do it regularly.
Toys coming to life. Are you familiar with Indian in the Cupboard?
Yes.
The movie.
Yes.
And he's pushing the toys around, and there's like a Ram Man, like that he pushes to the side, and I think Darth Vader comes to life, and a couple other just random characters that But as a He-Man fan, growing up, I'm just like, wow, wouldn't that be cool? Like, I'm like, obviously, a little kid, but I just remember that being like, okay, that would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the concept of it, but yeah, just something about it just never latched on for me.
Small Soldiers
stuff, so never saw it.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't know. I think because like when I was 15, my mom took me to see Braveheart, and I got super serious about my movies.
I mean,
Mel
Gibson does that to you.
I wanted to see big, epic action movies. Okay, so I got to pull this one up here real quick. Maverick just said he thought I was 36. I don't understand. Yeah, I'm 43.
Maverick, you don't understand numbers yet.
Well, see, and I don't know how much these guys were joking, but I was hanging out with Ish and Van Johnson at the con one night, and they were saying about like, oh, you're just a young guy. I was like, how old do you think I am? And they're like, I think they said something in like low 30s, maybe even late 20s. I was like, are you for real? And they're like, yeah. It's like, I'm 43.
Maybe your locks. Yeah, maybe your locks throw them off or something. Or
if I shave my beard, everybody says beards make you look older. If I shave my beard, I look older. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think so. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I as a creative person that I believe you are, I recommend Small Soldiers has definitely a charm to it. I recommend that movie.
Okay. I got to pull this one up from Curtis. Also, hello to everybody in the chat. Sorry, I'm not trying to ignore you. We're just like engaging in the conversation. Just
Hey,
I kind of
Curtis.
chats there sometime.
Hey, shout out to Curtis at Legion's Con. They literally next year they're going to have a one of those like plastic kid fences, and they're going to have like, you know how like at church you have like nurseries that you like drop your kids off at, like they're going to have a section like that for Curtis, so that when we drop off random people to him, they can sit with him for a couple hours, then we'll come back and get them.
The Legion's daycare room.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll just wall off that that atrium area on the way into the dining area.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's not going to be in the same place, but oh man. But yeah, Curtis, every time when I saw that bit on Family Guy, that totally nailed Randy Newman for me, because he's like, see about the guy, he's like, he takes an apple, he takes a bite, it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's funny.
But
yeah, that's on your homework. If you're not into Toy Story,
okay.
We'll give you the homework of Small Soldiers. How about?
Now, I have seen 3 of the toy. I haven't seen the last one, and I haven't seen Lightyear yet.
Did you see the toys? The toys that time forgot, the dinosaur.
No, I should.
There's like a short one.
Okay.
And so I think I don't know if they ever talk about the T-Rex Rex, but I know the blue dinosaur. They like basically they kind of explore where these dinosaur toys came from.
Okay.
And so there's like a battle dinosaur toy line. And again, it's one of those things where like you're watching like, okay, this is like creatively, like that's cool. Like this Triceratops, she never had her saddle, so they never, like, no one in this story knows that she's from this other toy line.
Okay.
You know, type of thing. So it's a pretty creative spin on it. But yeah, it's like a little 35-minute clip on. I think they have it on Disney Plus, but it's pretty fun.
Awesome.
And of course, I'm sitting over here watching it, and I'm like, I need to make my toys. Like,
well, and that's the thing. Like, I think seeing your stuff, seeing the pictures online, and knowing how the Horseman's stuff looks and everything, I was really excited to see them in person at the show. I know I only got to come by your table for a couple minutes, but they look really cool. I can't wait to. Do you still have your link up for the survey, or is that done?
Yes, the link's still up. I can share it with your group.
Yeah, what's is it a
it's essentially it's just a Google Doc as far as like the survey went. And I can definitely I can even send it to you now, or where's my phone? My phone's right there.
I'll tag it in the in my post, like the announcement post about
no, I appreciate it. Yeah, we're still kind of
in the comments on the show, rather.
Yeah, awesome. That's cool.
So anybody watching, if you want to check out Matt's Defenders of Eden, the Armies of Ashmore is the wave, the dinosaur figures.
Wave 1, yeah.
Do you have pictures of them on the survey?
Yeah, not on the survey, but we have pictures on our Facebook page, and also I had to start like a Twitter page. Somebody that night at Legion's Con, they're like, you need to start a Twitter page because there's some pictures of your stuff on there, and like there's over 500 people liking it. So I'm like, oh, well, I should probably go on there.
Okay. So watch either tonight or tomorrow. Oh, nice. Is that a new one?
No, this is an old one. Steve Bisciotti traded me this one, and he tried to act like it was complete, but he was missing the head, the unmasked head.
Oh, okay.
That was the first fight I ever got in with that Bisciotti guy. So we're still not talking.
I made them. I don't know if you watched their whole show this morning, but I did a super chat to get them to plug this show tonight that you were on. Nice.
I bet he hated that.
Jeremy read it, and then he gave a big old raspberry and a thumbs down, but then he said he liked both of us, so I didn't know what he was.
You know what? I struggle with Jeremy sometimes because he's so lovable for most of the time, but then I feel like he has these little pockets of like, I have to hate, and then he just starts hating random stuff. Like all of a sudden he'll just be like, "F you, Matt Rod," and I'm just like, okay, well, like all of your other texts over the past 6 months were "love you," and then like now all of a sudden it's "F you." Um, but yeah, sometimes I'm trying to put a finger on him. It's hard. So.
And Mike Casper is, which I have not read these yet, but Mike Casper is plugging your Modern Wonders.
Michael Casper, awesome guy. I met him for the first time at PowerCon. You know, Travis tends to bring a lot of people together from the My Wife Is Gonna Kill Me group, and he's one of the guys that introduced me to Casper. And yeah, Modern Wonders is basically, it's not, I wouldn't say it's completely different, but it's my superhero world. So I created the Wonderverse. It's kind of my own universe. I'm a big lover of the TV show Heroes. I love all things Marvel and even most of DC. Like I just love the ideas of superheroes. So I wanted to make my own world because I have this big collection of superhero characters that I've made over the years. And I was never good at naming them. So I had my older brother John. He's 3 years older than me. He would always come up with names, or he'd say a name and then tell me to draw that guy. And so then I would sketch him and create him. So I just had this catalog of heroes, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna write my own book because I just got to get it out, of my head. Okay. So we've had 2 issues of that. Issue 3's almost finished, being drawn, and that one's coming along a little bit faster because the guys that work on that are in the comic book industry full time. So it's their day job. So that book's coming out a little bit quicker than we're Defenders of Eden. We all have full-time jobs kind of, it comes secondary. So that's what it's been a little bit tough on that end. I'm putting complete books out for Defenders of Eden, but Modern Wonders, yeah, we have issues 1 and 2 available. So yeah.
So before we get into more superhero talk, I want to backtrack 2 things. Yep. Well, backtrack 1 thing, ask a question. So you said your artist on Defenders of Eden is from South Africa?
The colorist is from South Africa, Cape City.
Cape
Town, yes.
Okay.
Andrew Kramer, yep. And then the penciler or the inker, he does pencils and inks technically because it's all digital now. That's CJ Edwards. He's out of Washington.
Okay.
And he actually lives, when me and my wife, we went and visited him and his wife, they live pretty close to the Funko headquarters. So we went to see.
Oh, nice.
And we went and got to go through that. It was pretty cool. Funkos are, people love them or hate them. But
yeah.
The one thing they did do right was they're like, you know what? We don't care who you are. We are probably going to make something that you at least stop to think I might buy that. So whether you're a NASCAR guy or a sports guy or a comic book guy, or I hate Funko Pops, and then all of a sudden you're just like, they make a Funko Pop George Costanza, and you're like, they got me, or whatever,
Yeah.
So
yeah, I asked about South Africa. I've been to South Africa a couple times, so if you ever get a chance to go over there, it's an amazing country. I mean, it's got a lot of problems with, of course, with their history and everything, and how apartheid really just messed up everything for, like, they're still dealing with a lot of that stuff, but that's a whole different show. But yeah, it's a cool place. So that's cool. I didn't know he was from there. That's I haven't been to Cape Town myself, but that's cool.
Yeah. I never got down there. I did 16 years ago. I was actually I was in Kenya for just over a month, and I was in Rwanda for just over a month. So but yeah, I recommend anybody, I say if you get a chance to go to Africa, like I loved it. It was a beautiful place to go to, and beautiful people, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah.
Yeah, someday I'd love to go to somewhere in the Congo region, whether it's, is it Zaire again, or is it still the Democratic Republic of Congo? I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure it's still the Republic of Congo, but I could be completely wrong.
Because I remember they changed that when I was becoming interested in that region of the world. Yeah. And Rwanda and Uganda are right there. My oldest brother was in the State Department in Uganda for a couple of years, working in the embassy over there. Actually, during COVID, so he had to like come back from Uganda.
Wow.
Because of COVID.
Yeah.
because they were so far from any hospital or anything that could really take care of them if something happened. But anyway,
sure, yeah, that's cool.
And we'll hit on Legions one thing real quick. Was there anything from the Necronominous wave that really got you excited? I know you have some Mythic Legions. You're not huge in on them at this point, right?
Well, I've pushed it off years every time. Like literally the fact that I only have the Motu homage figures, and then I have some of these woodland creatures and a centaur. Like, it blows my mind that I don't have more, hanging out with as many Legions fans as I do. But it comes down to that creativity where on the one side I'm just like it just irritates me because I'm just like, I'm looking at these figures, I'm like, I got to put out this book. Like, I already have a book with like, and it's like, it makes me like want to do more creative stuff, but that's how Legions works, you know? And so, I think I went all in. Travis got me the next wave. Basically, I call it the colorful wave. There's
the Poxus wave.
Yeah, the Poxus waves. I was like, you know what? I'm done pushing it off. So, but yeah, I got the Poxus wave. But honestly, though, that chick with all the bone animals.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm not even like Jeremy or Laura, his girl, that's like super into skeleton stuff. But like even that stuff, like I'm looking at that figure and I just want it. Like I just want it. And I mean, that's a whole show in itself, Legions, and how they turn you into fans of their stuff. But yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, a large part of it was finding like, just again, like with your book, that tapped into like my childhood imagination, because they have their lore, they have their story, and I know they're working on a book and everything, but like, it's not like Star Wars where you can like take apart Han Solo and mix him with Chewbacca parts and make your own character.
Yeah.
You know, and have fun with it, because then everybody would be like, well, that's not right. Why does he have Chewbacca's arms? And but with the Legions, you can do all of that, even if you don't do the painting, if you just do pop and swap, or even if you just make up your own stories. It's just so cool, the creativity it inspires in so many adults, and seeing people that are sharing them with their kids and stuff, and how families are getting involved in everything with the customizers is just really cool.
It's very, very cool. And they definitely, you can tell where those guys came from and what loves those guys had. And the business side plus creativity, and they are, and I can say this just as a toy maker myself, soon to be, like, they are paving the way. Like, I'm watching them pave the way. Like, we're watching them pave the way when it comes to this stuff, because they're treading water that has never been kind of gone into yet, as far as from a company their size, realistically, because they have gotten bigger and bigger over the years. But they definitely still have that indie sort of toy company feel when it comes to just how they treat their fans, how they interact with their fans, the respect that they have for their fans. And so, they're like, just watching them do this stuff. It's like I mentioned, Plunderlings and Animals of the Warrior Kingdom. But then obviously, you have the Four Horsemen themselves, the Legions, Mythic Legions toy line itself, that it's like, wait a minute, like, this isn't done. Like, like Legion, like we're looking at a Legion's figure and we're like, dude, this is from this figure, this is from that figure, and we're like, but we're cool with it and smiling about it. Like, anytime that happens, it's like, this figure shouldn't be worth $20. It's Marvel Legend. They didn't do anything new, And so, and then on top of that, we're talking about price points of figures, and they're releasing their price points on this new Poxus wave, and no, not Poxus wave, the new the new wave they just dropped. They're releasing the price points, and like I said before, and I said this on a couple other shows, I've never seen something that they've released where I look at it and think, I'm not getting my money's worth. And that's something that's very hard to do. So the way I look at stuff, I'm like, I push it deep down in my soul now, but I used to be like big antique guy. Like, I love old crap, and I'm like, at antique stores, you see a couch over there, and I'm like, that's a freaking sweet couch. I'm like, if it's $50, I'm like, I walk over there, it says $200. I'm not a jerk. I'm not a Justice Curry. I'm not like gonna say, hey, will you take 50 for this? But I'll walk away and be like, oh, well, it was out of my price, but that's what I thought it was worth.
Sure.
You know. But when you look at their stuff, any of the stuff that they release and all the stuff that it comes with, I've never once, as a thrifty sort of, money guy, been like, I don't see the value here. And that's something that's definitely noticeable. And I think that fans notice that as well. So
yeah. Well, I know we talked about it. You mentioned superheroes. Curtis is very excited to hear us talk about how great the X-Men animated series was and how awesome it is that they're revisiting it.
Oh, Curtis, you're gonna be sadly disappointed.
Danny is saying that I'm excited for Longshot's return because there was something going on in the chats. I don't dislike Longshot, but he is not a character I'm super.
He's got the 3 fingers, right?
Yep,
just the 3.
Yeah, and you mentioned Heroes, which I'll agree with Danny on this. Season 1 was awesome.
Oh, that's when, and I need to preface that too, because when obviously the writer strike and a lot of stuff that happened with Heroes, but when it came season 1 of Heroes for TV, for me, was groundbreaking when it came to the superhero genre and what stories can be told through serialized television, episodes. 1-6 shooter. Well, remind me not to send Trevor my Longshot action figure to get pictures taken of him.
He'll come back melted.
His hair already looks kind of melted, though, like his hairstyle.
Before we jump into the X-Men discussion, if the Kickstarter does well, would you consider making more dinos?
Yes, Maverick, stay tuned. But yeah, we have more dinos specific to this size. We also have another wave of dinos in the future that is of a different buck. That's a little bit more of a slender buck. And yeah, dude, yeah, we'll take care of you, Maverick.
Is that like the queen?
Would
she fit in that size?
Yeah, well, essentially we have this slender size that we're gonna knock out. We've got the queen, the new general, the pterodactyls, and a velociraptor size character. He should be. I think we've seen those warriors in issue 1 when he shows up to the city to greet Silverglove in the morning. I think there's a couple in the panels there. Of the velociraptor size dinos.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as I saw the queen and that the new general, I was like, oh man, I hope we get figures of them because they looked really cool.
Yeah. We're definitely gonna try to hit that size buck as
the
well.
Queen's is it a parasaurial office with the crest?
Yep. Okay.
I love dinosaurs. I used to have for a while. I had almost all of the Jurassic World figures, and then I scaled down to just like the main ones from the movie, just because they keep making so many. And I'm like,
well, you see was it the Beast of the Mesozoic? They got some like if you're hard into dinosaurs, they've got some beautiful stuff too over there as well.
I've got one of theirs at the moment. One of the, I can't remember which one is, but it's one of the Raptor, like the 6-inch scale Raptor one. So I have it on opposite end of the shelf from the Amber collection Velociraptor. So I have like movie version and more research version, and kind of in the same pose. But yeah, I think the dinosaurs are going to do awesome. If I would have seen those figures you're making now as a kid, I feel like I did when I saw the pictures. I was like losing my mind. Little kid me would have done it with like a much more PG mindset. Because I just wouldn't have known those other words to use. But yeah, I was really stoked.
Yeah, we were just excited that budget wise we were able to scale up to that size because we really wanted to make them be beautiful to be posed with a 6-inch line so that they're just kind of that big size next to any 6-inch action figure. So we're really glad that it worked out that way because there's something imposing about them and a lot of stuff. Originally when we were going to do that smaller size, I have the painted version that you have there. I
Mhm.
have it next to the Warriors, the Animal Kingdom. The
Okay.
3 3/4. His original, Jason's original Kickstarter was in that 3 3/4. So I have a wave of those, and they look awesome with that one. But he went bigger, so I had to go bigger.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. Um, all right. So I don't remember
So
what it was, what came up, but something you and I were messaging in a group chat
yep,
or something, and X-Men came up, or
yep.
no, I think it was it on the podcast? And I was like, I'll talk to you about X-Men.
I think it was on the chat. I think there's a chat that I drop occasionally. I drop like my fan castings, and ask you guys if you're interested in
Yes.
that stuff.
Okay. That's where it was.
And so I think the image that I was doing, I was fan casting like an animated series, like it was all like a lineup of those characters. And
Okay.
so I think that's kind of what started it. And somewhere along the lines, you said um, I think you said you weren't a fan.
Of the animated series?
Yeah, yeah, of the animated series.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. So that kind of threw me off because I know you're a big X-Men fan. And then on the other hand, I haven't met too many people that didn't care for like I'm not saying it's anything great, but I just never met anybody that said, no, I don't care too much for that. Usually they're like, I mentioned X-Men and they're like, do, 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 and they'll just start singing to me. So I was just curious where your head was at on that, because I'm still trying to, I know your fans on this podcast are waiting to see why you don't care for the animated series.
Well, it's not that exciting of a story. Sean Scavarno, who I've known since I was 8 years old.
Okay,
Um,
pause. Do you hear your microphone?
no.
You've got like a
No, I definitely don't hear that. I don't hear myself at all.
okay. I don't know if that's it. Literally just started when you were talking. It's kind of ask your guys in your chat if they can hear it. I just don't want you to get lost in what you were saying.
Um, okay. All right. It does. Danny says he doesn't hear. I don't know. You don't have earbuds in, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay. So it might be like a feedback thing on your end.
Okay, so it just may be in my phone. Then we're cool. As
It
long
might
as
be. Yeah. Hey guys,
okay.
if the audio sounds good, let me know. Usually they're pretty good saying something is off, but
No
yeah.
problem then. I'm good.
Okay. But you can hear me now?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I can hear what you're saying. It just has a weird feedback thing. So
Oh, that's weird.
no, you're good. You're good.
So Sean and I have been friends since I moved out to a new area, started a new school in the middle of the school year when I was 8. And we just kind of hit it off, became friends. And a couple years later, we were into like, all the 80s stuff. So like, He-Man and Transformers and all this stuff. And then we got into Ninja Turtles together. And then he brought over comics in between. It was the summer between 6th and 7th grade. So like 91. And I just really got into comics because my brother had some comics. He had some of the Secret Wars, some West Coast Avengers, some old Iron Mans from the 80s. And, so, I mean, this was 91. So I remember looking at the Secret Wars and I was drawn to Rogue because she was in green. Green's my favorite color. And I was like, why is this angry old lady? Like, what is wrong with her? Because she had the white streak. I didn't know her story. The only other thing I knew X-Men from was that one animated episode from the Pride of the X-Men from like the Spider-Man, and she wasn't in that. So I had no idea who she was. And then Sean brings over this book and Will Spertasio had done the artwork. It was an X Factor book. And I was flipping through and I was like, wait, is this the same girl that was in Secret Wars? And he was like, yeah. I was like, okay, I need to be into this. Because she looked so different. She didn't look like an angry old lady with like that 80s businesswoman, like slick back, short hairdo.
Yeah.
And again, green and everything. And so I got into the comics a year or so before the cartoon came out. So I was real excited for the cartoon to come out. Danny, you stop it with that. He just said B. Arthur for Rogue. Oh, So when the cartoon came out, I was all excited, and when I watched it, I think I was just so disappointed. I don't know what I was expecting, but part of what I loved about the X-Men comics was the artwork. So it was early '90s, so it was like Jim Lee and Whilce Portacio, Rob Liefeld on X-Force and all that. So it was that really energetic '90s style of art, and the show just didn't do it for me. I anytime Wolverine would turn his face, no, he does have a ridiculous mask that if you see it in any form outside of comics, it just it's weird looking. Same with his hair. It just looks weird when it's not in its regular format.
Yeah.
And I think just the artwork just didn't work for me, and the stories, the personalities, some of them were they were a lot better than the movies, the personalities, but just some of it just didn't work for me. And that's where the whole, I think, big fan push for Rogue and Gambit came from. And I don't dislike Gambit anymore, but I don't like them together. I don't think.
Okay.
I never liked that.
Are you a Rogue and Magneto guy?
I was.
Okay.
Because I love that whole Savage Land storyline where she's like surviving on her own without her powers. Yep. And I just liked their interactions. And I thought that was an interesting thing because she had been a bad guy and then became a good guy. And
yep.
I thought that was really interesting. And I liked some of the stuff they were doing when I started getting X-Men about 10, 11 years ago. Because I had missed buying stuff for a while. And Gambit hadn't been really much part of it. As far as like them being together anymore at that point, which I was fine with. But it's really weird. There was a run of books called Uncanny Avengers where it was like a half X-Men team, half Avengers team after the Avengers versus X-Men fight to kind of show the world, all right, we're gonna bring the mutants onto the Avengers team so we can have like a more unified approach.
Mm-hmm.
And Rogue was on the team, and at one point Deadpool was on the team. And I'm not a huge Deadpool guy. Like, I don't dislike him as a character. I'm just not like a fan. But there's a moment where Rogue had to do something. She had to like kiss him to help save him. And they shared this moment where she kind of gets to see into what his mind is like, and with his constantly healing and, all of that effect with his powers. I thought that was a really interesting thing. And I'm like, I never would have pegged those two together, but that weirdly kind of works. And then they just did the whole thing in the comics where they just it was supposed to be the Colossus and Kitty wedding, and then they didn't do it, and they're like, well, we're all here for a wedding, and Gambit's like, oh, we'll get married, and it was just like, what? They haven't even been spending time together in the comics before this happened. And yeah, so yeah, the animated series, I tried watching it last because I knew we were going to be talking about some stuff. So I watched about 5 or 6 episodes last week, and I was like, I can't take any more of this. Like, I thought maybe I was being harsh. Spoilers. Dana, that's like 4 or 5 years ago now. When I read that comic where they got married instead of Colossus and Kitty, I literally chucked my comic across the back room of the comic shop.
That's funny. I apologize. I'm plugging in my phone because I didn't realize how low it was. So if I apologize if you think I'm ignoring you, because I'm not. So you definitely have preferences, and I mean we all do, but you have preferences as far as when it comes to like X-Men itself. Like, you have certain storylines that you're just all in for, and then you have ones that you just want to stay away from.
I mean, there are some that some of it I think is just better storytelling, or it's on a topic like there was one that kind of bummed me out and I just stopped reading. It was like I forget. It was like something with Vulcan. So they established a third Summers brother.
Oh, okay.
And there was this whole thing about them being in space, and I was like, what is this story even about? And I hated it. And then they did this other one. Oh, I forget what it was called. Was it Deadly Genesis?
Deadly Genesis. Is it Vulcan?
I don't remember. Maybe I'm mixing on my titles up, but there was another one that I just didn't like.
Yeah, I think went on. So did you? Okay, it might have been Deadly Genesis, but the one where basically Professor X is, just to let you guys know, I'm kind of crazy because I had an original squad, or I had a secondary squad between original and Wolverine's class, big giant issue, and I sent them, including Vulcan, Cyclops' brother, and most of them died. And I erased everyone's mind from this happening. I think that was Deadly Genesis.
That might have been it. But yeah, I didn't like when they started adding, like when they, was it the High Evolution or someone did something and it started expanding mutations around the world. So there was now like millions of mutants instead of just thousands. And then they killed them all off down to like under 200. You know, I'm not saying every X-Men thing prior to the current storylines has been gold, but
right.
The current stuff I cannot stand at all.
Yeah, and so that's where it comes down to, like, just the overall fact that you have decades of this stuff, and then everyone kind of wants to leave their mark, or everybody wants to like add their own kind of versions of these characters. And so one of the cool things about X-Men the animated series, I don't know if it's there you are. I don't know if it's on I forget what I watched it on. Is it the Toys That Made Us, maybe, or the cartoons or something? On one like documentary type of thing that I was watching, I saw that like they worked their way around certain things. So for instance, with the animated series, like they were only allowed to have a certain amount of characters be used. And so the producers and the writers, they wrote Beast into jail. So they could technically still use him as a character, or so they didn't have to waste a character like one of the numbers on him, but they still had him in the story. There were some like pretty cool like little things about that. Yeah, I mean I'm with you. Storyline wise, I'd say it wasn't anything to write home about. I think that it definitely had that Saturday morning cartoon pocket of shows that turned it into what it is today. So I'm a firm believer in how we can definitely romanticize things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for instance, Johnny Depp, decent actor, great actor. Is he a little over romanticized how good his acting is? Yes. Brad Pitt, good looking guy. Is he over romanticized how good looking he is? I think so. So I definitely think that we can take things that we know, and like if we think about them, or if we speak on them in this like sort of this rosy colored lens, like we think it means more and we think it's better. And so definitely in that pocket of, I think it's like Spider-Man, Batman, X-Men, Power Rangers, Beetleborgs, or whatever came last, like there's this pocket of lineup where like, shoot, I think it might have been like Bobby's World, and then like Eek the Cat, and the Tick. There was like a lineup of like 6 shows that like if you were a fan of that lineup, you talk about that lineup like it was gold.
Sure.
And especially the heavy hitters, like like I've had people talk to me about, and I think it's a good show, Batman the Animated Series. Like I think it's a good show, but like I've heard some people talk about Batman the Animated Series in ways that scare me. Like that, I'm like, you're drinking too much of the Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? But the same thing with Power Rangers, and the same thing with X-Men or that animated Spider-Man show. I think that there's definitely that rosy colored lens that when you're at that age where you are watching something, but then you're also allowing yourself to kind of, you think if you remember it more fondly, then it was better.
Yeah.
But I mean, and some shows are like that. Like I absolutely adore He-Man. Like, can I sit down and, if it's in the background, I can watch Filmation while I'm drawing, but like I'm not paying attention because it's just things were different back then, you know?
Absolutely. Anytime I've tried to go back and watch, like, especially the shows from the 80s that I loved as a kid, like I see now, I mean, you know, I've got the jaded adult road weary life stuff going on. that everybody does, that you lose some of that as you grow up, but like the elements of the magic are still there, but like as a whole, the shows like Thundercats, like I still like Thundercats,
Yeah.
or the original Transformers, the original He-Man, like that stuff, but the whole episodic nature where everything just kind of resets every episode and nothing had any weight. I don't
Well, you know
think
what, you know what's happening to you? You're growing up.
well, that in the cartoons, it didn't bother me, but as a kid,
Okay.
when I watched, was it Growing Pains or something? They got a dog in one episode and then you never saw the dog again.
Oh, screw that. That's messed up.
Because like a lot of the sitcoms were the same way too. Like you dealt with whatever was in that episode, and unless they added a new family member,
Yeah.
you know, the storylines didn't always carry on. And X-Men did that. I will say X-Men did like progress stuff, and I'm not saying X-Men is bad or that people who
No.
like it, but like it just didn't work for me. But I love that it existed because it got so many people interested in characters that I love. And I think it paved the way for the movies eventually. And, you know,
Well, and similarly to Turtles, where, you know, you get your guys that are like, screw the cartoon, my turtles all
yeah,
wear red masks, you know, and
yeah,
whatever. And it's like it's another piece of that pie. And so, you know, X-Men the animated series, you know, for me growing up, I think that was right in line when I started kind of I wouldn't say I collected He-Man toys when I was little. Like I did the garage sale finds and occasionally store finds and stuff like that. But X-Men for sure was like the first line I really collected.
okay,
And I think that carries a little bit of weight too, because then I'm connecting it to the cartoon, or like I'll see like random stuff in the intro. I think there's like a couple characters that never really show up, but they're in the intro. I think Avalanche might be one of them on the bad guy side when they're running at each other. I'm like, well, when are we going to get to him? Like, you know, like that. Cause like, I know these characters and I have the toys or have the comics. But I think it definitely brought in, you know, enough fans to, I think, you know, I'd say it was again, one of those lightning in a bottle things where that animated show did the best out of, I mean, all those. I mean, there was the Fantastic Four 1, 2, and there was Iron Man as well, and Incredible Hulk as well, and none of those ever really get talked about or mentioned. As far as, you know, as far as cartoons you grew up on, I mean, I'm talking very broadly, but you know, those were right in the 90s as well. But for some odd reason, the X-Men, I think that it has to do with that age, and then also all of the kind of the cross appeal of what X-Men is. You know, we both, I think
yeah,
that's where we both kind of connect to X-Men in that way, where just a lot of the messages
yeah.
really kind of resonate. So,
And that's the thing that always struck me is, and why I love the X-Men so much is like, all right, so every issue started with like X-Men, you know, they live in a world that fears and hates them, but they, you know, they try to protect Xavier's dream where mutants and humans can live in peace. And, you know, every issue would have that in there somewhere, you know?
yep.
And, you know, finding that book, like as I was becoming like right before I became a teenager, and then learning that's where the whole crux of the story came, is that the whole X-Men thing was originally Stan Lee wrote it as, now I'm not like the fanboy of Stan Lee that a lot of comic fans are. I think
But
he's like, I'm not trying to talk bad about him, but like, I don't like worship the ground he walked on kind
this
of
conversation is over.
But like he created a lot of awesome stuff, but then a lot of other people is what made them what I loved about them, you know?
I'm right with you. I'm right.
Okay. But like the original concept, I guess, was that, you know, they're teenagers, they're going through puberty, they don't feel like they fit into the world. So it was a whole, like originally an analogy to puberty and going from childhood to adulthood.
Right.
And as someone who was entering that phase of my life, like that just really clicked for me. And I feel like some things they've really kind of focused that onto specific things more modernly, and that's fine. But yeah, just the whole, I didn't feel like I didn't fit in at school because I went to church and I like comics. I
Yeah.
didn't fit in at church because I wanted to grow my hair out and I like comic books.
Yeah.
You know, so it was like this whole like weird thing.
You're basically Nightcrawler, is what you're saying.
What? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but yeah, you know, and that's the thing is that you X-Men, I think at its core, that's what it is the unknown of acceptance and where you fit, because it doesn't matter who you are, like it's part of our human nature to want to be in the crowd, like that wants to be like, we want to be in that circle, you know. And like yeah, all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, there's other kids, like there's other people with toys on their walls at home, like me. And then like I connect with them, and like all of a sudden, like at least in this pocket of my life, like I found this, I'm in, you know. And there's something about our human nature that definitely desires that, I think.
yeah.
um so
And I
yeah,
don't.
that's why X-Men is just, it's yeah, I think it's again, Stan Lee, love him to death. None of this is made on its own. None of it's I
Yeah,
mean, I mean, Chris Claremont's run in the beginning with some of the stuff that he did, it definitely solidified. But it goes back to that stuff where it's just like, is Batman where he is without Frank Miller, or is Daredevil where he is without Frank Miller? Like, is, you know, is if Claremont never comes around, like, does X-Men become what it is? Like, we don't know.
right, right.
Um, and I think that those guys specifically on those examples, Claremont with X-Men, he had his fingers were on the pulse of what was at the core of X-Men.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely, you know, gave it weight, you know.
Well, yeah, and like you were saying earlier, like he was writing characters. He was writing people with personalities. They fit archetypes, but they weren't just the archetypes.
Right.
You know, Nightcrawler. He's the furry blue elf that looks like a demon, but he's got that faith. His whole
Yeah.
being is centered on his faith.
Yep.
But he's viewed as a demon. So it's like the exact opposite, you know, and like,
Yeah.
how was that in that group we were talking, our group chat? We're talking like Wolverine, like he's one of the few people Wolverine likes because Wolverine doesn't like anybody, you know, like that's
Right.
how good of a person Nightcrawler is. You know?
Right. Wolverine can't like not like him.
Right.
He has an incredible I have a Wolverine DVD set, like just a story, like it's 5 episodes from the animated series, kind of all circling Wolverine story. And one of them that it's pretty heavy, not pretty heavy, but is Nightcrawler's origin is actually one of them, because Wolverine's one of the main characters in the episode. And he finds himself at church at the end of the episode. And as a person that like grew up in church and stuff like that, I'm like watching this episode, I'm just like, Wolverine's at church. Like it was just really cool to me, because it like felt like it just felt like there was that connective tissue of like, oh, I go to church. Like, he's in a church. Like, he's thinking about humanity and morality, and he's thinking about these things that I'm thinking about. Like, so it was just a pretty cool episode if you do get to catch it after getting through the Rogan Gambit stuff. Get to the Nightcrawler X.
I'll look that one up specifically.
Yeah. Origin of Nightcrawler. Good stuff. But yeah, I would say for me, the X-Men, I don't know, and Curtis brought it up, like jumping back into like calling it the 92. I, as a 92 lover I love the cartoon. I'll put it on in the background. I'll tickle my son while the music's playing in the beginning, because I've done that to him since he was little, and he knows when that do comes on, I'm going to tickle him. And now he's 13 and he hates it, but it's still a thing. I am completely against them. It's one of those exact moves that I think that they know more about the source material and what they have than it's basically them. Okay, so we're going to make Doogie Howser again, and we're going to put it, and it's going to be a girl in Hawaii, and we're going to redo this on Disney Plus and blah, 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 because people like Doogie Howser and whatever. Meanwhile, the other Disney plus shows that are doing well are like, you know, Big Shots with John Stamos. It's like not connected to anything. It's just a new thing. But as soon as I saw that it was X-Men 92, I thought to myself, somebody's pitching this hard and somebody's buying it. But I don't think it, yeah, I think you're in the room and it's being pitched, and the pitch itself, the idea isn't great, but this person's selling it. That's the only way I think that this got legs.
Yeah, I'll give I think it's the comic they brought back was X-Men 92. That's kind of like revisiting that. The show, I believe they're calling X-Men 97.
Okay.
The new one. And I'll say at this point, like the character designs, they're not blowing me away, but I like the look of the animation more than I did the original show. And since I think it's the same animation team that did the What If series.
Okay.
Because I know Marvel was developing their own animation team
animation,
through Disney or whatever. So like
so
I'll
is it going to be like
shot.
what is it going to be? What if like so that kind of were all the what ifs like that? Were they like it's like 3D, like almost human-esque, but
it's kind of like the cell shaded CG, like it's like a weird hybrid. I don't know if it's going to be that same style. I just know.
Did you watch the new Christmas special, Guardians?
Oh yeah.
So there's those couple like shaded like flashbacks.
Yeah,
like, that seemed like it was like what if style ish.
It was it felt a little more crude.
Okay.
Like not as detailed, but yeah, I'll give it a shot. Because again, I know part of my reason for disliking the animated series was because I was so invested in the comics in that year and a half that I didn't feel like they really hit the characters the way I portrayed them. So I know that's a me thing, not a show thing.
Right.
Same thing with the movies. When the movies came out, I was really excited, and I loved the movie when it first came out. And then I saw all the movies, and like I just kept getting more and more disappointed as time went on. The live action movies, and by the time the last one came out,
X-Men's my jam. They don't hold up like the original trilogy. Like they came out about, especially technologically, like 5 years later, they would have been like 10 times better, just because like the advancements in like visual effects over that time frame like just drastically changed. Especially that first one, Wolverine's cutting through the he's cutting through the fence and like his claws are bare, like like actually had him go through the fence, so his claws are like getting caught, and he's like cheek 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 cheek, and like Mystique's like holding the fence up, and I'm just like that doesn't, like a minute ago you just said it slices through butter, and now you're having a cat lick his tongue on the claw in the next movie. But
and I think a whole lot of it is a lot of the now there are parts in all the movies I like. I think Hugh Jackman is great. I think Patrick Stewart is great. I think Ian McKellen's a great actor. He did not look, because Sean and I talk about this a lot. Magneto was always drawn as physically imposing looking.
Yep.
I mean, granted, I know that was just kind of the stock comic look for a character, but just him being someone who was as old as he was in the comics, to be that muscular, and just that scene in that the Jim Lee X-Men #1, where it's that 2-page spread, and he's like, "You dare come here? I am Magneto," and he's just like, just so badass.
Yep.
And again, I think Ian McKellen's a great performer, but he didn't sell me on Magneto.
So for me, I'm right with you. If we're going to jump from animated to movies, heads and tails, McAvoy and Fassbender, for me they were actually, and like I love Patrick Stewart to death. Mm-hmm. Like I love him, but he was just Patrick Stewart sitting down. Like he wasn't, like, characterization wise, like he did the job and I loved it.
Yeah.
But like he, like, all of a sudden when, like, wait a minute, Charles has a personality, like he's like at the bar in the one movie First Class, I'm like, like think of us like with that power, drinking like at college age, like you know what I mean, like it's like actually gave him a personality. And so heads and tails, I think that they did better, but again, it might have to do with what material they were given and what to do with.
And I know especially the earlier ones that I'm blanking on his name, the director,
Singer.
Yeah, I know I don't want to get into all that. He the stories I've read is that he prevented or didn't want the cast to read the comics because he wanted it to be his own thing.
Sure.
And as a creative person, there's a part of me that gets that, but at the same time, I'm like, you're doing established characters. You got to have some.
You're being way too nice by saying that a part of you gets it.
I mean, if it had been his original stuff, I'd have been a lot more understanding. But just
right.
But
and
like, did he even read the comics? Like, because
exactly,
I don't feel like
because that kind of comment though, if he so him making that comment actually is, I think, confirms, because with Superman Returns, I will go like Brandon Ruth, he did the perfect Christopher Reeves impression. Like you could tell Singer said, I want you to finish my fan fiction of what I think happened in the next movie. And so when it came down to that, if you look at it through that lens, Superman Returns was fine. Like, because literally it was a big budget, completely fan fiction story.
Mm-hmm.
And he just was told to act like the actor before him. So yeah, with Singer, the only good thing, in my opinion, he's ever given us is the Usual Suspects. I am a fan of that movie. But going back, yeah, even there are certain things that just don't hold up with the X-Men trilogy, and especially the first. It has more to do with him again, and it goes back to the thing. People mock Christian Bale, swear to me, and like it's like, no, like he was acting. Like, you should probably be mocking the director or telling the director, you know what, let's pull back a little bit and not become a meme or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So there are definitely some things that like you can look at and you try to kind of analyze, and you're like, wait a minute, that's a director thing, and this is an actor thing. Ian McKellen, I didn't know him beforehand. And as much as he's probably the same exact age as Patrick Stewart, like he just looked old. And like it works for Gandalf, but for me, like the dude just looked old. So that kind of I struggled with, and the double-edged sword of real world history being interwoven with the X-Men universe itself. Like, I get it. And there's definitely the edge that is like, okay, this is cool because then it feels more real, or it feels like it could happen. But then the whole other side of it is just, well, then like the red tape of like walking through all of America's history and like looking at it through the lens of the X-Men, it's like it ends up just being, I don't know. I wasn't a fan of how it was pulled off, I guess.
Yeah, in the First Class era of stuff, where
Yeah, the
each
second
movie was a new decade.
stuff where I get it, and it's the idea, the concept of it's cool. Like everybody dresses, decade specific, for the next one. But then again, you're starting to look at it as, I'm suspending my disbelief, but you're telling me this guy is this age, and in 10 years he's going to be that guy. Like, and that's what happens when you connect it to points in history.
Yeah. If you look where Dark Phoenix ends, like it's less than 10 years from that till the first X-Men movie, like chronologic. Now people argue that, it's a different timeline, blah, 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 whatever. I'm like, the fact that we don't know and they don't make any of that clear is part of my problems with those movies. The fact that Storm's accent changes through the first three movies.
And that type of stuff. And so that type of stuff for me is so blatant when it comes to production that, like, as a creative person, it irritates. And I'm sure there are creative people within Hollywood and within those stuff. Like, I'm sure somebody like Tarantino or somebody that would be like, it would piss them off to no end, like having an accent change for no reason. But you're dealing with these big budget guys that are just like, we don't care. And it's like, that's like that twist of the knife is like irritating to me, where she's just like, I don't want to anymore. And it doesn't have quite the charm that Kevin Costner gives it in Prince of Thieves, when he's like, you know what? I don't care. I'm not going to speak in an accent.
I guess some guys are commenting about Magneto in the movies. And look, I know in the comics, in that X-Men 1, they talk about how he they like de-aged him and brought him back up to 8, whatever, like because he
Yeah.
was like a child at one point. And I know you can't jump into all that, and especially in your first outing in the movie.
Yeah.
But just imagine, if you will, that first X-Men movie. You got Professor X, and then you've got a younger, more buff-looking Magneto, and they're talking like they've lived through life experiences together. And you're like, well, what's that guy's deal?
Yeah.
I think it adds a little more mystery to
If,
Magneto.
if in that first scene when he's Professor's rolling down the platform, if Fassbender would have walked up,
yeah,
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's hard to change him, Danny's saying, because he's linked to the Holocaust and all that stuff. And I think that's really important for his character.
But so for me with that, I think it's important for his character, but like even if you were to just take the dates off the bot, like you know what I mean? Like how so Captain America, he's like a man out of time and he's like specific, but like they've unthought him or dethought him like at random points in our history. So like we can redo this in 50 years and have them dethought then. Like
yeah.
So even if you have it be the Holocaust, but not have it be dated that, so that everyone in their heads are like, okay, so why is this guy? Because eventually this stuff, I mean, when it comes to X-Men and superheroes in general, this stuff, one decade in their time lasts 50 decades in art. You know what I mean? Like it's all extended.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you could easily have that be a thing where the heroes are like, where Wolverine's like, wait, Magneto's the same age as you, but like, or someone could be confused by that, and they're like, well, yeah, because the magnetism of the Earth like keeps, like they could have easily,
sure,
but I mean, it's not that big of a deal at the end of the day because McKellen acted the hell out of that character.
He was
physically look it, but I
was a fan.
Somehow Magneto returned.
What do you say? Somehow Magneto returned.
Sith magic. No, and nice. Is that the bendy?
Yeah.
See, and my first real introduction to Wolverine was the Secret Wars action figure. 5 points of articulation. He had the claws that clipped on. So at that point, it wasn't
the one right before this one, right?
The one that would have come out in like 85 or whatever. Yeah, the ones that they created the first Marvel event crossover just so they could sell the toys because the DC. Yep.
Okay.
That's the one.
I love brown and orange.
Yeah.
Brown and orange is where I'm at all day long. And so with the X-Men, like I've been out of the comic game for a while, so I'm seeing new generations come up, but there's definitely some elements, like I don't know if you've ever tapped into like the TV cartoon Wolverine and the X-Men or X-Men Evolution, but both of those shows, they're, in my opinion, are very well done and for completely different reasons. X-Men Evolution, they kind of add a little bit more to the generational stuff. So you have Storm, Wolverine, Beast, Angel being like an older class. So they're teachers within the school. And then you have like Cyclops is like the senior in school type of thing. And then Jean, Kitty, Nightcrawler, Iceman shows up in a little bit. But like, so they spread it out a little bit more. So storyline wise, like it's not all like same age characters walking through the same story together, so that there's some cool layers there. And then the only problem I ever had with Wolverine and the X-Men was just the title of it. Obviously Wolverine was the vehicle, and they were like, here, we're gonna, and I mean, I love Wolverine to death, but it's one of those things where it's like, how like you love that indie band and then they like blow up and you're just like, they were mine, like, like, now they're playing at a stadium and you're just like, they suck now, screw them, like,
all their stuff like in a 7-Eleven and
and so you're just like, okay, so it takes a little bit of that romance out of it, but but outside of the title being Wolverine and the X-Men, I definitely enjoyed that cartoon for the first season, and then they teased the heck out of you at the end of the last episode with a new storyline that's actually a comic book storyline that a lot of people like. And they tease you with all those designs and that world, and then it just never came. So I don't know. Have you seen either of those or no?
I've
Have
seen a
you?
couple episodes here and there, but I think they were out when I was like in college and stuff, and I just didn't have access to like whatever channels they were on or nice. Um, uh, yeah, so I've seen them and I like the artwork.
Yeah.
Again, since I'm such a Rogue fan, I didn't like the whole like goth take on Rogue.
I don't know. Why do you think that that started going down that? I mean, I don't follow Rogue very much, or in the early days. Was there any particular reason why they took her down that path?
I think they were
Like
just
the early comics?
no, because the early comics she had short hair. She was always in like the more like kind of the single breasted coat with the hood. Like she had a much more like adult look to her. And I don't mean like
Because even in the original movie trilogy, she was like, I don't fit in, but she wasn't like goth. I don't fit in. Like, you know what I mean? Like they didn't make her goth in that, but
yeah.
it seemed like all of a sudden in the animated shows they were just like, we need to like did it come down to like representation, quote unquote, like they were like, we're gonna make a goth chick?
I think it was more they were and I don't know. My guess is they were trying to get more unique silhouette profiles of characters to look different.
Yeah.
So I don't remember what all the characters looked at in the series, but like wasn't Kitty in that? She had like the ponytail and Jean had the long hair.
Yep.
So, you know, Rogue was an easy one to probably mix around what her look was. Cause
Right.
you know, that would be my guess, was to give her just a different silhouette / profile look to make her more quickly distinguishable. And, you know, it played into the kind of, because I don't remember, wasn't the Brotherhood part of the school in that as
Yeah.
well?
Yep.
Um,
They went to the school too, and but they
yeah,
had Quicksilver and Blob and Toad.
yeah,
Um, and then
and I
she dabbled in with them. But yeah, it was definitely during that generation where they started kind of giving her that style of a look. Um,
and they've never done that in the comics. Like she's
yeah.
never had a look like that in the comics. Like right now, she's back in her '90s uniform,
Yep.
which I know that's everybody's favorite, but or
You
probably the
know,
most popular.
I like the. I mean, grew up like those. Like if I collected legends, like hardcore. Like right now, I only collect outside of my Wolverine collection. I collect the movie verse
Mhm.
figures. So like I have like all the movie ones. You know, I just got the other day. I picked up the old Namor here.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
um, but outside of that, like I look at the Marvel Legends, like the X-Men lineup, like the comic book, like Blue Class, Gold Class, X Factor, like that whole lineup of toys. Like I have kept that buried deep inside. Like because I know once I buy that class, like I'm just gonna be like, okay, Jubilee, Rogue, Gambit, Beast, Bishop, Morph. Like I'll go through them all. So I've definitely kept away from that. Like I have boxes here of the '90s versions of those things,
Mm.
and so now they're like remaking them for basically me, and I'm just like, oh, I love it, I love it. But I like that Rogue costume. I think I like her green costume. Um, there's a green and white one that's pretty cool looking. I've never been a big, again, emo Rogue fan of her that style. Um, And then Gambit, yeah, there's some characters that are just like you put them up on the screen, you're just like you just immediately think '90s. Like for me, it's like Gambit '90s, Cable '90s,
Mhm.
Spawn '90s, the Bishop like '90s.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys where like that's just and a lot
There's
of time when it's the hair out of the like mask, like it's like '90s.
Well, the worst, some of those I can accept. It's when they start doing that look with the ponytail, like they did with Jean in the animated series. So
Yeah,
they've got the
yeah,
headpiece up to here, their hair's coming out of the top, and then they're pulling the ponytail out the back.
yeah,
Like Gambit was like that. Jean in the animated series was like that. I don't think
yeah.
Gambit was like that in the animated show, but in the comics he was. Oh, which one's that?
I don't know. I just always would buy them whenever they'd come out. He's got whatever this but joint's called,
Oh yeah. As you
but
say, '90s you can always tell, except for Wolverine, because that was kind of a harken back to his original costume with an update. But like, um, if there's more pockets and straps than are functionally useful, it's
Yeah.
from the 90s.
Oh, for sure. Just draw. I can't draw legs, but I can draw. Straps to cover the legs and pockets to cover the legs.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I'm right. I'm right with him because Rob, how do you Liefeld?
Liefeld, yeah.
Liefeld. Like, dude, back in the day. I mean, still to this day, I'm like tall grass. I'm loving it. Like smoke. Like anything keep me from drawing feet, I'm down with. So I get where he's coming from.
Sure. I think he knew his limitations and he leaned into it. Like in my mind, Rob Liefeld, looking back on it, at the time I liked it because it was very, I mean, Jim Lee, Will Spertasio, some of those other guys were my favorites, but Liefeld did stuff to where it was like, as an 11, 12-year-old getting into comics, it looked different than the 80s and stuff I'd seen from stuff from the 70s. It looked more dynamic. I mean, as I became more artistic and stuff over the time, I see the flaws in all of that, but like it was action packed. Like his art kept me turning the page, you know?
Yeah.
And it's funny, you know, we can all make fun of his stuff now, but it's like, you know what? He's been in the business a long time. There's other artists I dislike less or I dislike more whose artwork is arguably better, but then, you know, the way they do, that's a whole different tangent.
No, for completely understand. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, you know, growing up, like there's a lot of image stuff. Like once that branched off, like that, I definitely like looked cool to me. But then part of me too, as a creative person, it confirmed, and I'm not like trying to be like mean about it, but like it confirmed like some artists like should just draw like creatively, like it was okay, but and some writers should just write. Like there are a lot of people that try. You're reading your comments?
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. We'll let them chime in. But like a lot of times people they'll try to like cross over a little bit more, and sometimes it comes down to that collaboration that really makes things a lot better. I mean, like you talked about with like Stan Lee, like, you know, Jack Kirby, like if Kirby's not there, a lot of that stuff doesn't happen, and some of these other guys. And so when it comes down to it, there's definitely something to be said about like knowing what your strengths are when it comes to creating, and kind of staying in your lane more or less. But definitely the thing that I think sparked that Image comics is the same thing realistically for me that like even go full circle with McFarlane, but that sparked Neo Mythic Legions is that like these other companies, like you get to a point where you're comfortable, like it's going to spark something from, and a lot of times from within. Like I don't know if it was Redbox or Netflix, but like yeah, like they walked into Blockbuster and were like, hey, you guys should start mailing out your movies. Like you guys can do a really good job at this. And Blockbuster was on the top of the mountain and they were like, nah, we're cool. We're making a crap pile of money.
Yeah.
And then like within 5 years, like red boxes were everywhere and like Blockbuster was tanking. And then quickly Blockbuster was like, oh, we're going to do mail-in DVDs. Like we're going to do it now. And like, so when you're part of the DC or the Marvel world and you're like there, and then you have all these like, and then all of a sudden, boom, Image comes along. It's like, no, like you're on the mountaintop. Like these guys are trying to like walk their way up on their own. Like that's something that keeps kind of that creative process in check, and hopefully raises everyone's game as far as creatively and you know the content that they put out. So
I mean, I will say this, as much as I jumped on a bunch of the Image stuff because I was following the artists more than the writers at the time.
Oh, exactly.
You know, but every time I would read new books, except for a couple of them over there, it was all like, oh, this is their take on the X-Men, or this is their take on this and that, and, you know, whatever. And, you know, Danny's saying, you know, Liefeld's best creation was a soup with stolen ingredients. I mean, for comics in general, and a lot of creative stuff in general, like it's everything influences everything else. So everything's a little borrowed.
Yeah.
It just depends on what you do with it to make it unique. Like I thought Wetworks was really cool. The whole war between the vampires and werewolves, and there was that government team that was set up, and they got those gold symbiote suits and everything. But like a symbiote suit that enhances you, I mean, that's Venom.
Yeah.
but they did a totally different thing. It was all military based.
Well, and
You
that's
know,
that's completely the truth is that, and I will always say, like, even if you read my book, for my Modern Wonders books, like my superhero world, it's like I will be the first to say, like, there is, I don't believe anything new will creatively will come out that isn't connected or influenced by something already there. And so the best thing and the only thing that I can do is tweak the lens and tweak this kaleidoscope enough to where it feels familiar, but it's interesting and new enough that you want to like it, or you're interested in it. So for example, like I had a buddy of mine who he does vintage customs of mostly Star Wars stuff. He'll like make customs of characters that were never made.
okay,
And I think he used a Terminator Salvation toy tank, and he made a Tech Trek that's like a vintage looking Tech Trek character of mine. And I was at a convention and I was selling issue 1, and I had these couple action figure customs. And this dude came up to me and I'm not joking, he argued with me. He's like, I had that toy. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Like, this is a custom. He's like, no, I had that toy. And I'm like trying to describe to him, like, no, like he's in this book, like I created him, like, and a lot of people like try to like figure out like what influenced him. And if I can show you original pictures of Tech Trek where his trek is super, I don't know where my hands are. His trek's super long, and he can go forward and backward in it, like on this little like belt
okay,
thing. And basically, what's his name? Bonebreaker is like
yeah,
my original influence was Bonebreaker. Like, it didn't come from anywhere else other than that. And so, but it was really cool because it kind of confirmed that he's just like, no, like this book and these characters, these toys here, is like they were familiar enough to him where he's not a nerd and he's not into this culture, but he saw it and it sparked a memory, and he's like, I had that. And I'm like, no, you didn't. But so it's that with Modern Wonders, that's what we hope to hit, is that like you can kind of see some influence and you can kind of, but it's original enough that you like it and want to see more of it, and so that it's not a
yeah.
complete, quote unquote ripoff where, some people say a lot of that Image stuff was just like, shoot, who's one of the characters? I think like not Swift. Who is Swift? The like there was one that like literally the guy, I think Rob or one of the guys was like, no, this was I had a pitch for like Justice League characters, and this was Speedy, and like they didn't like my pitch, and
Oh
so
shoot, yeah. What was his name? He was the Archer in the Youngblood book.
yes, and so
Um,
a couple of those characters were like legitimate. He pitched them to DC, and DC was like, no, you just draw what we tell you to draw, and so he like kept it, and then when he moved over, he was like, okay, I'm going to use this stuff now.
yeah.
I think he had like energy arrows or something. I don't know. But seems vaguely familiar. But so what comments are you laughing at? Who's laughing at us in here?
Sorry. So no one's laughing. Trevor's been making comments, and Curtis keeps asking him if he's doing okay. And
Okay.
he was like, someone go do a wellness check on Trevor.
So we're gonna have some what was some internet drama. What's the segment
Toy
called?
drama?
Toy
No,
drama?
I don't think we're gonna have any drama here.
You ever see these guys in the stores like 10 years ago-ish or 5?
Oh yeah,
they like you put them together and they all have these like holes.
Yeah.
Can, like,
I never got any of those, but yeah.
This was like their Glyos versions of stuff, I guess, I would assume, sort of.
Because they had Star Wars ones too, and
Yep.
I'll say this: I never got into Savage Dragon. Joe is mentioning Eric Larson.
Yep.
I have total respect for that guy as a creative person, because he is still writing and drawing that book.
That's awesome.
And he said as long as he has stories to tell and he can afford to keep making it, he's going to do it until he stops. But I
think that sometimes the romantic side of being a creative person, from the outside looking in, can wear, like how he's saying, like as long as he's got stories to tell, it's like, I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and become Stan Lee. Like I'm not going, like, and a lot of people like me are not going to. But from the outside looking in, people think, well, that's the final, like that's my final step. They look at me and what I do with my comics, and with my creations, and they think that that's the final step, but they don't realize that like whether or not one person or a million people read Defenders of Eden or Disciple 6 or Modern Wonders, like the fact that I get it out there and get it out of my head is like that journey of it. And like he's saying, if he's got Savage Dragon stories to tell, like, and he's still doing it and he's able to like provide for his family with it. Like with me, like I work full time. Like this is just stuff that I want to do. And yeah, it would be awesome to do full time eventually. But it's not like a snap of the finger, like you become this like famous person and you're just doing creative stuff and people are just handing you money. You know what I mean? Like I would do it either way, because it's just kind of ingrained in me. So that's awesome that he's still doing stories. I never got into him. Obviously, again, 90s, like Savage Dragon, like that's the 90s.
Yeah, Savage Dragon was basically the Hulk meets cop. Like,
yeah.
You know, and again, not putting it down for that, but like that was the kind of concept behind it. And I think it's the character is now it's onto the Savage Dragon's son, I think is the character. So like he's actually progressing it his story. Yeah, and you know, I think that's really cool. Again, I'm not reading it, but I just think it's cool that he's still doing it. And I think he's like one of the top guys at Image these days, or at least he was a few years ago. I don't know if he still is. But yeah, it's just, and like you were saying about getting your stuff out there, I self-published a comic like 11 years ago with Sean. We set up at Baltimore Comic-Con. I had it there. I think I printed like 200 copies because that was, you know, what I could get a Kickstarter for or whatever. I was like, all right, I did it. And I was like, man, the effort it took to write, draw, and put all that together. I was like, I can't sustain doing this on my own. So like I've moved away from the art side of it and I've just been writing stories.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing. And that's the thing as far as sustaining, it's just like, yeah, I have 6 total issues out. Like, I'm nowhere near the green as far as like what I've invested.
Yeah.
And so it's not all of a sudden I'm making money off of this stuff. Like, it's like, no, like there's time and effort and energy to pay these artists. And then like if you're doing art yourself, like it sounds like you and Sean were doing like, and Sean's talked to me about that before too, where it's just like, again, there's that romantic side of it that like, yes, it sounds awesome to do, like make your own comic book. But like, as you're doing it, like I have so much respect for people that do it full time, because me, it's still a point where it's creatively fun, because it's technically not connected to any sort of I need money deadline-ish type of things, where I could only imagine if that would like draw or drain the fun out of it, being like, well, produce me a page, Jesse, I need one by tomorrow. Like, you've got 12 hours. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And like, I enjoyed doing it. It was, you know, but because I was working 2 jobs at the time and trying to get it done and giving myself the deadline of having it produced for the Comic-Con, you know, I had a definitive timeline for it. So, yeah. So yeah, I had no doubts that like, I wasn't going to like launch a career and, you know, be the next Stan Lee, you know, doing that. You know, I just wanted to have fun and get it out there. And eventually that has led to eventually finding the Mythic Legions community and then doing the show and getting to talk to people like this on a regular basis. So it's like, man, whether there's 11 people watching right now or 200 people watching, which like, that doesn't matter to me. Like, I get to talk to you or whoever the guest is.
Yeah.
And that's where I went, and we get to, you know, interact with the folks in the comments. Like, you know, it's never going to be about the numbers for me. That's fantastic.
I think I need to replace his battery, though. He's not saying anything. I tried pushing the button. So as far as Rogue being your favorite X-Men,
yes.
Who are your other top 2?
My other top 2? Oh man, that's tough. I think it depends on my mood and which characters I'm really feeling at the moment, but like, Jean Grey and Storm are definitely up there.
Okay.
Nightcrawler's up there. I mean, I do like Wolverine. I think he definitely got overplayed, and you know, he kind of, you know, was a little too far, but I've always liked Wolverine. I remember being a kid when Sean and I were talking about how I was like, oh man, I wish there was like a girl Wolverine or something. I don't know. I like the female characters. And then they did X-23 and I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Wasn't there that the other chick though back in the 90s? I think there's one. She's got laser claws. Oh, I'll find a picture of her for you. It's crazy. I forget what her name was.
Was she the one from X-Men 2099 or something?
Maybe that's
an alternate.
Yeah, but she had like these laser claws, and
okay.
it was a short little thing that happened. But I remember that.
Okay.
Did you enjoy the movie Logan?
No.
And X-23, you didn't enjoy her part in it either? I mean, as far as just...
Again, I think the performances were good. I think Hugh Jackman, and I think part of the reason he was able to do what he did is because, if I understand the stories correctly, Kevin Feige actually like snuck him copies of the Wolverine or comics so he could understand. That's why he's the most
Wolverine-esque.
Yeah, or he's the most on par to his character in those original movies. I forget where I was going with that.
Well, X-23, like...
Oh, so Logan, I can appreciate Logan for the movie and the creativity and the directing of it, but I think the fact that it really bothered me for some reason that they had like the boob flash at the beginning of the movie. It's like, all right, we want to make sure you guys really know this is rated R, so here's a topless girl.
Completely the F-bomb in the F-bomb that Magneto drops when Apocalypse comes out in the Apocalypse movie.
Oh yeah.
He shows up and he's like, who the F are you? It's like it was not in his character's thought, like it wasn't him. Like they were just like, we get to drop one F, like let's use it. You know what I mean? So like stuff like that just, I definitely, I'm with you on that. It got so much praise that it kind of, I don't say irritated me, but like I didn't not like it. It felt like another movie. Like it didn't. I don't know. I have I have some like minor things. Like I think it's Caliban, now that I'm remembering it, that's taking care of Professor X.
Yeah.
We're like, dude, if they had freaking Kelsey Grammer as like a gray beast, like old, so like cool. It like right there, it would have been like 10 times better. Just like, I don't know why they get so weird about like trying to connect things like that like fans actually want. And this is again pre a lot of this Marvel MCU stuff, where everyone just loved that movie so much, and it just, you're like, what is it, like they had to get to a border near the end, and like I'm just in the theater thinking like, what's gonna like it's literally like an invisible border between two countries, and I'm just like, so they're gonna stop chasing them because of this invisible border. Like there's just like little things through the movie that I was just like, and I didn't mind he, for all of the joking about him being tall, like love the guy. Like I think he did, like I like him as Wolverine. I definitely think that I'm ready for a new Wolverine. For me, like I'm ready to move on to an MCU Wolverine. But that's again some of this gray area where, you know, if I'm at that place, like I should be over Patrick's or Fassbender and McAvoy, but like part of me's like, no, I really freaking like those guys. You know what I mean?
If they did their best, but again, Dark Phoenix, they messed up so much stuff in that movie. And I don't even mean just like in comics, but just as a movie and within the comic or in the movie universe, so much stuff didn't make any sense. And I remember when the movie came out and they were trying to make it about this like,
which bad Dark Phoenix are we talking about right now?
The one that's actually called Dark Phoenix, the last one they did.
Okay. No, because because there's two of them.
There's
Like
Last Stand that they
X3.
shoehorned the Dark Phoenix into.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah.
And
So
then the one that was actually called Dark Phoenix with the McAvoy and
I'm trying to
all
even
that.
remember the plot of that.
Aliens come to Earth because the Phoenix
Yes. Okay.
gets Jean, and that's what Jessica Chastain's character is. So
Yeah.
instead of being the alien planet that the Phoenix destroyed, they come to Earth and they try to like win her over.
Yep.
And it's just the movie just doesn't make sense because we already saw Phoenix powers at the end of Apocalypse. She
Right.
had the Firebird when she's fighting Apocalypse. So like that already was like, what? And you know, they even talked about it in some of the other movies, I think. But yeah, it just felt like they were just trying to keep the franchise going and they knew people would go see it. And the fact that they spent so much less and less money on, and I'm sure for Jennifer
No, you know what?
Lawrence, moving the makeup down, it was better for her as a performer, but at the same time, it's like she just looks like she looks like a Blue Man Group with a couple decals on her face.
Yeah. Okay. So this is my pitch is you have Dark Phoenix movie. First of all, again, it goes back to just production in general. You're already trying to cut corners. Not only are you turning her to the Blue Man Group, you're also being like, so, my higher up told me that we can only use X amount of dollars. Like, wait a minute. Let's just give Beast like this serum. Like, let's pretend he has some serum now that he can control it. Like, that'll help. You know what I mean? Like, but like stuff like that, that's just randomly thrown in that you have this fan base that is so hardcore. And again, I'm like, you give me a fictional world, I'll live in it. You show me the rules, I'll follow them. But guess what? I'm also going to expect you to follow them. And so when you establish so many things and then you have it where you're like, no, like that defeats this purpose. Like, and like, I didn't mind some of the stuff like Beast turning blue technically because it might have been her blood. Like, I don't mind some of those little tweaks. And I'm definitely all about if something can be done better in the movie than it can be done
Sure.
in comics, like the way Professor X gets paralyzed. I absolutely loved in First Class. I'm like heat of the moment. This happens. That's an accident. This happened. Like, I loved it. Like, for me, that's my new canon of how he gets paralyzed because I really did think it was well done.
Yeah.
But for a lot of those movies, it comes down to the almighty dollar and, looking at the First Class and how well that was received and how everyone was ready to look at be like ready for this next one. And then all of a sudden, I think what would happened, if I'm remembering correctly, is that director, Brian K. Vaughan, I believe,
Matt Reeves,
who did Kingsman. He wanted to do Apocalypse in like 5 movies. He wanted to like build up to it. And the studio was like, no, we're doing it now. Like we want it now. And he was like, no, it's you have to build to it, and he's pitching it. And then they ended up like the disagreement. And then all of a sudden Singer's like, well, I ruined your first franchise and I messed up with DC Superman. So now I'm back to like, make a little bit of money for you guys, so he jumps back in. And so there's just, it just doesn't seem like the right people were in place when it came to even overall, like, what would the mentoring, just a person that's like in the room, like literally give me somebody like Claremont in the room that like just like sits and listens to this, because yes, they might poke holes in some of the stuff, but they will make it better overall for the greater good.
Yeah.
And I feel like you need that stuff. Who's laughing at me in the comments now?
No, I'm laughing because Curtis said First Class is his favorite of the X-Men movies, and then Trevor comes in with First Class sucked. No, I liked it. I'll say I liked First Class when I first saw it. I loved that take at the end where that coin is, or was it the bullet that hurts Professor X?
Yeah, the the bullet fractures his spine,
Yeah, I
and
thought that was.
the coin through Kevin
Oh, right.
Bacon.
That's right. That's what that was. But my biggest problem with that movie was making Mystique such a center point between Professor X and Magneto. I don't like that plot concept. I don't like that she was
No, because
basically
because
Charles'
the,
little
because the
sister.
studio doesn't have balls to just tell an actress like it's not about you, and whether or not it was about her or the fact that they had to pay her so much to be in that role. But this entire from First Class on, their main f up was making it about Mystique.
Well,
Literally,
especially because she's so less of a character in the first original X-Men movie. Like she's basically just like one of Magneto's arm candy henchmen.
right,
She almost doesn't talk. She has very little personality in that movie. So
right,
she goes from being what Jennifer Lawrence was in those movies to that just shadow of herself. Like that's a horrible story arc for her to go through.
right. And people obviously
Obviously
no one.
fix that by killing her in Dark Phoenix, but um I don't like the Professor X lifelong frenemy status came from like a 2-week training montage.
Right,
That's
right.
my biggest gripe about First Class is so I'm supposed to believe these guys go back and forth between friends and adversaries for the next 50 years because they spent 2 weeks together training this group of people on a mission that kind of succeeded, kind of failed, and left the one paralyzed.
So for me, so I absolutely love talking about these X-Men movies because I picture what could have been.
Mm,
So like at the end of First Class, you don't have them be enemies at the end of First Class. Like you don't that doesn't happen yet. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
That's the end of the
Like
first arc,
right,
is them
like so
realizing that they've gone down different paths.
right. And so for me, you have the next movie being them at the school with the actual class,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not some of and I don't mean that to disrespect this class, like I like this class, but you have like some of the OG people come in and
Sure.
you just have it be this little bit, and then you get these moments where you get like the character Mimic who like ends up dying in this movie, or something like that, where you get this like through this whole next movie you actually have the chess game going on of I'm trying to make you see it my way because I think you can. And Magneto eventually realizing he's never going to see it his way,
Mm-hmm.
Professor's way. But you have that be through a movie where you just you build that up more so that it's more impactful.
Yeah. Well, and you've got it right there. You've got that one in the 60s, and you've got them moving into the 70s. You've got the whole human rights movement
Yeah.
right there to that they eventually worked into the X-Men comics as a big plot point. Like you've got it was right there. I mean, that was teed up and ready for them to go. Like we're coming together. Magneto keeps pushing for them to go public. Charles is like, no, they're not ready yet. This and that. It's yeah.
So you have that take place, and so yeah, you can still keep it where have it be where Cyclops is the younger brother, and you have all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't think, especially if you're looking into the future, like I'm literally picturing if like Feige and MCU had it, like there's no way in hell they would have them become enemies at the end of the first movie, like because
Right.
that's just not good storytelling.
Right. Or if you're gonna start it like they did with the initial one in 2000, where it's already into their storyline.
Yeah.
Don't make Magneto the first villain. Use him in the teaser at the end to be like use him as the terrorist that he kind of like Mandarin was in Iron Man, taking over the TVs, and like have him be that version of Magneto making his debut. And Professor X is like he's back,
Right.
or
And
something like that.
you can still have that where you have most of what happens in X-Men 2000 take place, except Magneto never takes off his helmet, and Professor's always just like, I think he's behind it. I think he's behind it. And it's not until, like you said, at the end, where that opening scene where Professor rolls in and Magneto steps forward and they're on that balcony,
Mm-hmm.
at the UN or whatever it was, you have that be the end of the movie. Be like, Magneto's revealing himself. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I like it too much to like dog on it. So when it comes to the movies, I'm always like looking at it like through like rosy color glasses. So even first, or even what's it called? Last Stand. I'm like, do you know how close that was to being a great movie? Okay, so I'm gonna break down a couple things real quick that I just have to get off my chest since you're an X-Men guy.
Do it.
One, camera angles. We don't need them to physically say the fastball special is him grabbing him by his pants and flinging him around and throwing him. There's nothing a couple camera tricks won't accomplish with Colossus crouching to the ground with his arm out, Wolverine jumping onto his forearm, like a spring, and then Colossus launching him like that or something along those lines. You know what I mean? They just made it look so stupid. Freaking Bryan Singer. Okay, like how can you?
Well,
how?
I'll be fair. That was Brett Ratner.
Frank. That was Vaughn. No, who was that one?
Last name was Brett Ratner.
Ratner. How can you film that and like watch it as a director? And this is again my opinion. It's not a very good one, but I just don't see how you can be like that looks cool. Like kids will think that's cool. Like, so you have that. So get that out of the way. Now here are the key moments. In the beginning, they find Jean on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
They also find Cyclops. Okay, let's pretend Bryan Singer wasn't a jerk and didn't take him to do Superman. Blah blah blah. They find Cyclops too. So the scene where Jean's on the bed with all the hospital stuff on.
Mm-hmm.
In the next bed over is Cyclops with like a 90s looking like helmet thing, like keeping his eyes covered because just in case he wakes up and he's going to go nuts, blah, blah.
Sure.
So he's passed out on the bed next to her. So that changes that whole scene where she like gets all sexy with Logan and like she's like blah, blah, blah. And Logan like looks over and sees that it's like Cyclops is there. He chose her like, and he says that phrase, but it hits harder because he's passed, like your dude's passed out next to you. Movie continues. I want Angel, instead of peeking behind the door being like, oh, I'm watching these guys, they're about to go fight, like I might show up randomly for a couple CGI moments. He steps forward and is just like, bro, do you got another suit? Like, I'm in this with you guys. So then right there, fight scene wise, like we have him in the background. Like he's there. He's actually there. And his father sees the good he's doing. Like he's on the good side. Then you have it where give me a little black, you're not a 90s fan, but give me like the little jet that's in the animated series. You give me that battle scene. You have Cyclops wake up. You have him join them at the battle scene. And this is me just because I'm definitely an X-Men purist at heart. So F, Logan, and Jean. That end scene is Cyclops going up to her. Plays out similarly, however you want it, but that's what stops it. Cyclops shows up. And like that's X-Men to me. Like it, and obviously Wolverine the movie star, we're not going to give him a mask, blah, blah, blah. We're going to make him the central character, all this other stuff. But like if it was done by a comic book fan, those changes make it a lot better of a movie, and they're not very many, and they're kind of minor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Any changes that you would make?
Rogue wouldn't get the vaccine.
I like it. I like it.
I understand her wanting to, but then her seeing the battle or hearing about it, she goes and helps. They also kind of hobbled her because she wasn't able to get Captain Marvel or Carol Danvers' power, so she never had the flight, the strength, the invulnerability. So she was kind of crippled, which is part of the reason I'm excited to see mutants come into the MCU. Is I don't know if they'll be able to do this because they already had Carol with the whole.
Do you think they'd have the balls to make her be a villain in the Marvels movie?
I know fan speculation has said that would happen. I would be okay with that. But if her absorbing Carol's stuff, part of my only problem, I don't think they'll do it. or they'd have to really tweak it, is that
Um,
Carol already lost her memory.
Hmm.
So they can't go that far with it,
Yeah.
and lost the ability to use her powers like fully. So she would just have to be disabled and then come back, like power disabled and then
Yep.
come back. But like having that inner struggle with like Carol trying to help Rogue, because that was one of my favorite things in the 80s, was like Rogue having that almost split personality,
Yeah.
where they're in the outback in Australia and you hear Rogue scream and there's like crashing in the room, and she comes marching out, or they come to her like, what's wrong? And she's like, Carol redecorated my room while I
Yeah.
was sleeping or whatever. And I really liked
Yeah.
that struggle and how that kind of helped make her become a hero.
Yeah.
But yeah, just her doing that at the end, I definitely would change the Iceman relationship thing. Like, I know relationships and all that stuff is a huge part of the Hollywood machine, but like,
Yeah.
make
His relationship with Juno, or his relationship with Rogue, or
with
both.
Rogue, like it never went anywhere. Like it was only used as a plot device,
right,
to make him say the line, or to be able to have Mystique say like, oh, you're never going to be able to, or when she transforms into Iceman,
yeah,
like
they'll never accept you or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it was, like, because he's like, you can't touch, whatever it was that he says that makes Rogue go get the vaccine when it wasn't even really him. Like, it just, my change would probably be more involved, but at least having her come back to the fight at the end.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's the thing, that Warren goes with them, and then Rogue and Cyclops are the two that show up at the end to help. And I love the tension.
Well, yeah, if you have her there, and she's like, quote unquote, babysitting him, like she's like because they always had Jubilee sticking back, or like a character Kitty sticking back and like doing whatever, like she's like there with Cyclops, like, but there's so with Rogue, I know there's a deleted scene from Days of Future Past where they like save her, they like go and they break her out. And again, making it all about Mystique, like, never made any sense. Like, you give me, first of all, the first battle scene in Days of Future Past, you give me a whole movie of that, and I'm watching it. Like, that was, for me, the best part about the movie, because I'm a apocalyptic style like movie fan anyway, and so you give me the whole them battling against Sentinels, I'm there. Like, Blink was fantastic.
Give me real Sentinels, not these weird.
Well, and that's the thing, is they spun it to be her, but like, when they break Rogue out of the facility, if they would have showed up and the whole thing would have been like they're farming blood out of her, like tubes out of her, and the only way the robots are actually able to do that is because of her, makes sense. They kept trying to be, and even Rogue, even Mystique says it several times throughout all the movies. She's like, I can't do, like, Wolverine breaks through the claws, like, I can't like actually take somebody's powers. I'm Mystique, I just look like them. Where if you would have made them farming her blood, and that's the way the Sentinels can do what they do, that makes it 100 times better. And I don't know why that wasn't a thought.
See, I never even thought of that, and I would have hated to seen Rogue wasted, at least. Well, I shouldn't say wasted, because they didn't really give her anything to really do in any of the movies anyway, but that would have been a much more interesting contribution storytelling wise.
Right. Like, that's why she was important, her blood was the one that can duplicate powers. But they spun it to be like, I forget the guy's name, Dinklage, Trask, to be like, oh, well, Mystique, she's the key. And like, every time they like go down those paths with Mystique and Jennifer Lawrence and this storyline and the story arc, all I'm sitting as an X-Men fan is like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's all I kept thinking.
That's the thing. Again, we're looking back, hindsight 2020. They could have set that up where they didn't do it as a Days of Future Past. Maybe we saw the introduction of the Sentinels in the 70s like we did, and Magneto doesn't take control of them through electronics, because, that's not a thing he does. Because they didn't have any metal in them. And even if, I know he worked like the iron into the steel or whatever into them or whatever, so he could control them, but like, he activated all their technology. Anyway,
when it comes down to that, I will say, as you're finding this thought, is that give me the world and give me the rules.
yeah,
But Magneto floating, carrying a stadium while he's doing these other things with this other stuff, like I want weight. I want to feel a weight to what they're doing. So like for me, it was cool seeing Fassbender start to just move the dish.
yeah,
Like so when he's doing all of this, I'm just like I'm trying to think of, and I know it sounds super nerdy, but I'm like trying to think of it realistically. I'm like, how does his mind work all of those and carrying this and he's flying? I'm just like, no, like let's start small. Like let's make it let's I don't do you know where I'm coming
oh,
from? It's just
absolutely,
like
absolutely, absolutely. He went from barely being able to really use it in first class, not barely, but like trying to harness it properly. And in Days of Future Past, he's doing use. He's moving the stadium, controlling the robots. The guns are floating. You know, he's still paying attention and somehow able to talk to everybody.
and he's flying
And he's flying. You know,
and
and
he's
he
pulling a
doesn't look
thing
like
out.
he's breaking a sweat. You know, he's
But
like,
because even in the original trilogy, they like when it came down to his magnetic powers, they used it in a very subtle way in the sense of like brain power and effort and capacity, like the little like balls of iron and like making them into discs and different things like that,
mm-hmm,
moving all the guns. Like I'm fine, but like it it was limited when it's like, oh well, I can control metal, therefore I can control like I'm think I can't even think of everything metal in this room right now, but I'm like, you know what I mean, like
yeah,
I just want to think of it in a realistic setting because
yeah,
that's what they're trying to do. I mean with these movies they've said we're not going colorful, we're going like a cool superhero in the real world route, aka heroes. And that's, I mean, I love heroes because it was grounded in reality, and that's why I made Modern Wonders my comic book, because I wanted to have this. I have this character coming out. Shout out to Matt Dooch, who won a contest slash paid me. um I have a character coming up in Modern Wonders that the repercussions of him using his powers definitely takes a toll on him. And so we have an arc that's coming after the fourth issue where it's like power and consequence, and there are consequences to using your powers, maybe too much, maybe not enough. Like, and there's elements of that I think that when it comes down to these mutants, you know, where like what is it? One of the video games where like you could only use Cyclops laser, like the arcade game, like you had
mm,
like three power ups, like you could only use his big blast like three times, so you like picked and choose spots. I don't necessarily want that for everyone, but I want to think down those. I want to think on that line of thought more when it comes down to like, okay,
sure,
if we're going to make this realistic, let's break it down as scientifically, like at least let's look at the science of it when it comes to mental capabilities in general,
sure.
you know.
Now, if that would have been Magneto in the opening scene where it's like in the future and he's older, cool. Let me see him do all of this stuff, but he's got a time limit because he's so taxed because he's been alive so long. He can't just do that, you know. So as he's younger, he's growing into being able to control the things. He works up to being that Omega level mutant where he can do all this stuff. But as he gets older and he's tired, like he wears out. And then just randomly giving Kitty the ability to like send people's minds back. Like that was so random. Like I know they wanted to have her involved, and I
I
don't. It was just like, why are they just changing power sets just to make?
but I don't, but and again, I don't get how it's not even even them trying to connect her actual ability to that ability, like does like it doesn't make sense. Like it like it
Yeah,
was, again, it was a pitch. It was like a this makes sense. And somebody who doesn't know anything about mutants or powers or these characters is like, okay, sounds good.
yeah.
And I'm
Like I
pretty sure it was the same person that was like, you know what? So this is it. And this is my favorite pitch. My favorite pitch is You know that Deadpool has the same powers as Wolverine. He heals himself. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so like Wolverine has claws, but like Wade Wilson, he likes swords. He likes these long swords. He uses them. Like, so would it be cool since he can heal himself and he's always like Wolverine? Like, what if this isn't? Listen, Curtis Ackerman. What if we put swords in Deadpool's arms?
No,
But that was pitched,
I know.
and there were guys in the room that were like, "Fucking brilliant!" There were actual people that did that. It blows my mind. It
Yeah.
blows my mind. The
Oh, because
self-awareness, like there is no self-awareness. You're the guy shaking your head to that, and you
yeah.
don't have your version of Chris Claremont in the corner and like look to that guy that's been in the industry to be like, does this sound cool?
Oh, and because everybody hates that he talks so much, we'll just stitch his mouth shut at the end.
Yeah, because it will be funny. Astonishing. I think maybe Astonishing X-Men, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, the Joss Whedon run.
Yeah.
Danny threw this up, switching back to the comics a little bit, threw up
Yeah.
earlier. He asked what you thought of or he mentioned the Morrison run, the Grant Morrison. Did you read that? I think was that New X-Men?
The new is that when they get kind of in the all black and yellow.
It was after the movies came out, so
They all have the big X's. I think they have like it
yeah,
almost looks like they have
Wolverine's
like
got like he's shirtless, but he's got the jacket.
is it weird? Like, is it weird that for some odd reason I look at that coat and I think like it's like a rubber material, like it's a
Yeah,
weird like
yeah,
and then Beast has like the X like as his like corset, like
yeah.
sort
It
of
comes like halfway
like
up to his ribs.
yeah. Um I remember reading, honestly, you're digging deep, man. I remember reading that. I remember enjoying it enough. I'm trying to think of any big plot points. I don't know for some odd reason, and maybe again, my '90s is showing. Um, I don't like feline beast. Like they keep making him more cat-like, and I'm just like, he was never that to me. But it's also like he'll never be like Wolverine will never be James Howlett to me, like just because of where I come from. Um, but I'm just not a feline beast fan as much as they keep going that route. I can't think of any plot points. I like the art in that. I remember liking the art. I
I'll see.
wasn't big on the costuming. It had a. I'm trying to think of who the artist was on it. Now
Frank Quietly.
that's who it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now did Quietly did he do? Because now I'm thinking of how it looks. Did he do? What's the new superhero live TV show Netflix?
Oh, yeah. Jupiter's Legacy.
Did he do that art too?
Yeah.
Okay, so then that makes sense. And now it's
Yeah.
offering.
Well,
That's
they all had like the weird like puckered lips, and I'm not saying he's a bad artist. I didn't enjoy his style.
they.
Uh,
It's all everything's drawn very similar.
yeah, and like I liked the weird. I think it was his run, or was it the Whedon run? Like the banter between Kitty and Emma, like how they had such like a dislike for each other, but they knew how to work together.
Yeah.
But I hated that they had Cyclops and Emma hook up.
Yeah, that sort of stuff, and they dabble in that a little bit with Wolverine and the X-Men. I First of all, Diamond form Emma, not a fan of, just personally. But also digitally in the movies, just looks stupid. Like but I'm honestly I'm the same thing with Iceman. Like I love like when I see a cosplay of Iceman and he's like painted white and it's just like white and like it kind of looks glassy or like even go like the snow route. Like I don't need him to look like an ice cube for
Mhm.
me to like it. And so that's one thing that digitally they went into those movies where there's like, oh, well, we have this new filter and we can just click this and it looks like it's ice or like, and I just wasn't a huge fan of that look. I kind of like that semi transparent, I guess,
Mhm.
style for Iceman, where it's like a light blue.
Well, and half of his problem was he had to constantly wear a belt to keep that in check originally.
Yeah, yeah,
Like he couldn't control it. And I think that's the thing that they really lost is like everybody except for the characters we needed to be wild in the movie um, for dramatic effect, like didn't know how to control it. That's why he looked like the inside of a freezer because he'd turn that
yeah,
off and he would just frost over. He didn't look like he looked like a snowman originally.
yeah, yeah.
You know, but
But
yeah,
yeah,
but overall, like X-Men, I love the concept of them, the whole mutations. Like I didn't like the secondary mutations when like Angel's blood became a healing power and yeah, Emma getting her diamond form and Beast becoming more feline and
well, because, and the thing with that is though too is if you stop and look at that, if you're going to start down that path, my immediate thing is, then why can't Cyclops control his eyes? Like
yeah,
everyone's able to, and like there'll be arguments of, oh well, he's just can't control it or whatever. But like no, like if you go down the path of like giving everyone secondary and third mutations, like I'm gonna start thinking about everybody's also. Like I don't mind the thought process of like there's different classes of mutations where like
sure,
Iceman's up here, Jean's up here, some of these people are mid level. Like I get that. But when you start going down secondary mutations, you start going down the path of um wouldn't say bad storytelling. It's just it's creative, but
it's a gimmick.
right. I think that's more of what it would become.
Because I don't feel like they did it to everybody. They picked and choose who got it,
Right.
or at least they never elaborated on a lot of it. And, well, I mean, shoot, they even had Rogue eventually. Professor X helps her figure out how to control her touch so she can touch people. Like she's still shy about it, but they
Right.
got it to where it was not just an instant like death touch from her almost.
Right.
And then they undid all of that because, it's more fun to have her not be able to touch people, but then she got married to Gambit, so they give her an inhibitor necklace so they can, hook up at night and be a
Yeah.
couple.
Yeah. That'd be a way to die, man.
But, it's like the current Hickman stuff with House of X, Powers of X, and like all this stuff where
Did you
part
did
of
you enjoy did you enjoy House of X?
no.
Did was
I'm
it was
I'm
it
buying I'm still getting the main series right now just because I don't want to have to come back and backtrack down the road. But the
so I must have just got the original. I'm pretty sure it's House of X. I have a trade of it, and so I don't know if it's just that first trade, that first introduction of
it
the idea
was
of that, because
yeah.
again a lot of it I enjoyed it. It goes back to the whole trope of like when I was done with this trade, the end, like I mean, it's just this reset button. Like it's always just kind of this reset button where like nothing mattered, and it kind of. I think I enjoy that one. That's with the trade that I have is basically I think there's a lot revealed about Moira McTaggart.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that I have.
Yeah, where she's been
Um,
a mutant, she's had 10 lives.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And
Okay.
she gets to relive her entire life and do things differently.
Right. And that seems to be more of a gimmick. I'm not sure if you remember. I don't know if it's just a single issue, but I'm forgetting what trade it's part of. But there was a freaking Forget Me Not character in the X-Men,
Mm,
and there's like I think it's just one issue where like it's basically that Moira storyline, but it's like one issue where they've got this guy that's Forget Me Not, and like everyone forgets him, and like it's a I think it may be one single issue or something, but it's and at the end everyone forgets him, and I'm
yeah.
like, but because it was just that gimmick, I enjoyed it because it was
Yeah.
just this one issue, and it was like,
Yeah.
well, and you stop and think, you're like, oh well, I mean, if we're gonna start giving any power to anybody, like that could be a random power that's probably not the greatest power to have. Obviously, everyone
Yeah.
forgets this guy, but
Well, like there was interesting things in the House and Powers story that I liked. I kind of part of me liked the idea of them starting their own island nation, and they were setting the portals up so they could move around, because then you wouldn't always have to have scenes with the jets, and like it was a, you know, cutting down on unnecessary travel story. But then they
and wrapping in with what's his name? Who's the guy with the is it Cypher or which one? Trying to think of who the character was that they used with the teleportation and with the island construction.
Cypher talks to Krakoa.
Okay,
like,
okay, that's but that they were able to wrap in some like pretty old, I mean, established X-Men characters that, like, you know, I like it when you start seeing some of those third tier and fourth tier characters like be actually used. So like I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, because he and what is it, Warlock, the technovirus, like, you know, he calls himself Self-Friend or whatever, and
yep,
you know how they connect. Like there was some really cool things in the story, but for the most part, I think most of the characters are not acting in character, and most of them are acting like pretentious douchebags.
Right.
Like, and now they've terraformed Mars, and it's now like the mutant homeworld, and it's the capital of our solar system. And like Storm is like, yes, I'm the ruler here. And I'm just like, who? These are all like weird. And Beast is essentially becoming Dark Beast. Like he's experimenting. There's some current storyline where I think in Wolverine where Wolverine says something to Beast, like, you know, he tells him off or something. Wolverine gets captured at this like mutant slave auction, and Beast is the one who buys him. He buys Wolverine in like a slave auction and like kills him because death doesn't matter. The joke has always been that death doesn't matter to the mutants. They'll all come back eventually anyway. But now it's like in the thing where they resurrect.
Well, they built that into the overall storyline where it's almost like this. So it's almost like the next, if you stop and think about it, actually, it's almost like you have where like Stan Lee built the mutants, where like you don't have to stop and tell like origin stories like Spider-Man or Iron Man or Hulk. Now it's built in, and then so slowly but surely we've had the whole like, you know, everyone comes back because you don't die in comics, and then now with this book they're like, well, we'll just build it in, like,
yeah. But now it's become such a plot point. Like it's the whole premise of this whole Eve of Destruction, or Judgment Day rather, storyline where the Eternals are judging that the mutants are actually deviants, and they're now because the Eternals take care of deviants, they have to wipe out the X-Men.
Interesting.
You know, yeah. All right, we got a question from Curtis. If you were to recommend one trade paperback that's your favorite version of anything X-Men, what would it be?
I would say trade. What? Shoot. My trades used to be right here. I would say trade wise for me, and this is from a creative standpoint. I've got the big. I can never pronounce the word. Is it the omnibus? I have the if you like X-Men and have enjoyed X-Men, just from a creative standpoint, I just get a kick out of the Age of Apocalypse storyline, just because it's fun and it's different, and it's already a multiverse sort of a thing. So from that standpoint, it's just enjoyable to see and a built-in different angle, like what you're saying, where like Storm acting like that is out of character because it's Storm. But like if you were to take a book like this that's like kind of disconnected to the main universe, then you kind of see these other, you know, storylines, like we're like, yeah, like would Magneto carry on, you know, this legacy and start the X-Men because his friend died, you know? So I like the creativity of that, definitely. If you haven't read that, Curtis, it's a fun read, and got random books within books.
And for me, man, it's really hard to pick. It's probably because it's that nostalgia. It's the first entry, you know, kind of like a lot of people love, you know, whatever first Star Wars movie they first saw, or things like that. I really like the stuff right around the Muir Island saga, so like coming at like the later the 80s, like when they're in the outback. I like that team. I like the thing with the Reavers and Gateway, the Australian Aborigine guy that makes the portals and everything. Just that era of it. I can't think of any specific storyline I necessarily like that much. Days of Future Past was great, but I think that was only 2 issues.
Yeah.
And if you want something that's a good encapsulation that catches all of the X-Men, there is a series of books they did a couple years ago called X-Men Grand Design, where they've basically went back and retold the history of the X-Men with references to where the comics came from.
Yep.
They did the whole, basically, I think, up through the Mutant Genesis, like the X-Men Jim Lee #1 in the 90s, I think, up through that, or maybe a little bit into that.
Oh man, I remember those covers. I remember specifically going to Cobblestone Hobbies, and like I'm looking for probably my Marvel masterpieces. Like I'm looking for cards, and I remember those covers, and just being like, wait a minute, like they make a big picture, and like just being like, this is cool.
Ever since I got my first like second copy of cover 5, cover E, the green gatefold one.
Yeah,
I've had a version of that gatefold poster up on my wall probably for the past 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I really love that Jim Lee run, but like the stories weren't as good as the stuff that was right before then. But yeah,
Have you ever read any of the Exile more recent stuff where it's Blink?
The new Exiles or the earlier one?
It might.
I would like the 2000s.
I think I have the 2000 where it's like Blink, more
Nocturne, the female Nightcrawler.
Yes.
Okay.
I think the original Exiles ones. I think I have a trade of that. That it was actually. I remember enjoying it just because, again, some of the stuff it's weird because people ask like, what do you like and what do you enjoy, and like some of the stuff, like I enjoy it for the creativity, like just because it's kind of fun. Not necessarily like, oh, this storyline like totally moved me, that type of stuff. Whereas I'm like Deadly Genesis with Vulcan, the third Summers brother, and like I remember at the end of that, basically like Cyclops is pissed because of what Charles does.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, just like James McAvoy, like I'm reading this comic and I'm just like, Charles isn't perfect. Like he did something that he regrets, and he used his power, and like so it was a really cool, like more of a moral and a cool storyline when it came to that. Whereas in like some of this other stuff like Age of Apocalypse or Exiles, it's just like, again, like Defenders of Eden, it's like it's fun stuff. Like I'm not trying to, I'm not recreating the wheel here. So
I also Alexander asked if either of us liked the Ultimate X-Men run. I read a huge chunk of it. I was at Best Buy like 15, 20 years ago, and they had a DVD that was like the first 60 issues or 50 issues, like PDF. So I remember reading that, and I didn't like it as much as first because it was such a different take on things.
Yep.
And it was like that kind of edgier, darker, Professor X is kind of creeping on Jean Grey. Like there was a lot more like icky stuff going on in that series. But years later, Brian Wood was writing it after the whole Ultimatum wave storyline, where that's where Magneto did the thing with the bridge, and you find out mutants were actually created by the government, which I thought was an interesting take on it. There's this whole thing where the mutants like basically are given a portion of the oh crap, what's that called, out the desert out in the western US? The
desert. Oh no,
they're given it like a portion of the land out in the southwest that's like virtually uninhabitable, because like, oh, we'll send them there and they can die.
Oh, okay.
And basically given it as their own sovereign nation.
Yeah.
Well, Storm and some people, they basically they create terrain so the atmosphere gets like moisture and all this stuff. Ooh, yay! Bots.
You
Gotta
got
love it.
bots?
Yep.
Sentinels. Those sentinels.
Yeah. Hey, Oz, welcome. But so they create basically this not paradise, but this like habitable land, and a lot of them are still younger because like in the Ultimates, like most of them are like younger focused
Yep.
characters. And it's really cool. So they grow this forest and everything, and Rogue like kind of isolates herself more. She like lives up in the trees, kind of like Tarzanish, but because the trees were made by mutants, like the trees are mutants in themselves. So like she basically forms this almost Moss Man like symbiotic relationship with the plants where she can touch a tree and they'll tell her what's, oh, someone's coming in from the western border. And, it was a way for her to be free.
And that, thinking about her powers and thinking about like touching something that's alive, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I think
like,
so I think earlier I got it mixed up. I liked this art. I liked the Ultimate art better than I liked Cat Beast, Black Open.
Okay.
I forget which other one that was, the new X-Men run.
Okay.
With the Jupiter's Legacy artist. I mentioned earlier I liked that art. I was actually thinking about this one, so I got those two mixed up. Want to make that clear for all of your fans.
So yeah, like there's definitely things in all X-Men that I liked, some I didn't. Of course, Giant Size X-Men #1, nice. I don't have that one. That face is hideous though.
Yeah, it is.
What's up, Jay? Yeah, and then like as much as I like Rogue, she doesn't need to be like the main part of the story for me to like it. Like there was some stories they've done recently where Gambit was not with, but like in the books with X-23.
Yeah.
During her all new, when she was the all new Wolverine, and they gave her like a younger clone sister of herself, Gabby, that she took on the name Honey Badger, and they had an actual Wolverine and like an animal pet that had no powers that just ran around with him. They called Jonathan. I love that setup, and like Deadpool was like a weird mentor to Gabby because she doesn't feel pain, like she doesn't feel anything, but she has all the same powers. And she's a younger kid, so it was weird seeing Deadpool with like a child. And they're talking about like killing stuff and blowing stuff up, so that was kind of fun. But like Gambit came in a couple issues and was playing like big brother mentor to Laura, and I thought that was really cool. And he did one with, I think it was her, someone else, when they did the Monsters Unleashed storyline where they were in, I think, Louisiana and the swamps, and like again he was playing like a mentor character, and I like him when he's doing that more than when he's playing like I guess I just don't like smarmy, suave, Pepe Le Pew type guys in general. So seeing that in his character,
right,
when that's all the writer wants to write, I don't like, because that's more of a caricature than a character.
Right. And, well, and it can get old quick, because when you're looking at caricatures, you're basically looking at a stereotype, okay?
Yeah.
And so most stereotypes that we know of and we think of, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to put that on you. But then we get to like, you'll have like, oh, well, but then you start getting to know that person and you realize there's way much more to it that you were just kind of like seeing like this little layer of it. So it's weird, and it's hard to do when you have a character like that the person's writing as Pepe Le Pew, but they're also interacting with people that not only have read them for 20 years, but have interacted them within that world for 20 years. Like, well, so why is he still that guy? Like, why is he still that caricature? Like, he should be normal guy to these people that have been friends and lived with him for 20 years. You know what I mean? So it's a weird way to write a character.
Well, yeah, because I think it comes back to, in some ways, and this is part of my problem with the show, is so many people got introduced to the characters through that show and never read the comics.
Right.
So that's like a built-in money grab. And again, it's a business, it's a company between Disney and Marvel. Like, that's what they exist for. Like, I understand that. But like, it's like when you constantly just go back to like, oh, this used to be popular and we know this sold stuff then. I mean, I guess you could say that about everything, but like when when it undoes growth and change and development of characters just to throw characters back in old costumes and give them the personalities they had 25 years ago.
Right.
You know, I don't know, that bugs me. And it could be X-Men or anything, you know, it's not just that, but
I thought you were just talking about Spider-Man for a second there.
yeah. Well, like I really liked what they did with, I know the sidetrack, you know, what they did with him in the movie, the Tom Holland movies, where he has the Stark tech, you know, he was in a sweatsuit basically, then he got Stark tech, and now at the end of No Way Home, he's at that stage of being the Spider-Man, kind of the traditional down on his luck, alone in New York City with the homemade suit and all that stuff. Yeah, I like that they were able to give him more, but then reduce him back to like the base level without feeling like going backwards.
Well, and not feel like it's going backwards, but it for the most part, it does make sense within the universe they created. Like Tony's gone, like they forgot who he was, like a lot of stuff was undone, and was it kind of some elements of, you know, Doctor Strange and that stuff was a reach, but all in all, like it seemed believable, and it seems believable for him to be at where he's at now in life. So,
well, with them bringing Ms. Marvel in as a mutant, I think is interesting. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's clever storytelling to help start establishing the mutants, or if it's, well, the Inhumans bombed so bad as the TV show, we're going to try to forget them and not tie her to that. That remains to be seen if that was a good idea or not. Like bringing Namor in Black Panther as a mutant, clearly, I think is really interesting to where I'm trying to manage my expectations, but I have high hopes for them doing something good with X-Men when they finally bring them into the MCU proper. That said, like I said, I'm not a huge Deadpool fan, and I'm okay with the Fox movies going away at this point, but I am kind of excited to see what they do with Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool 3. Like, more to see their chemistry than, you know, for the universe at large, you know.
right,
Danny?
And so I don't know who I was telling it to. I might have been talking to you about it, but like I even said, if they just for a scene, if they were to digitally make Hugh Jackman short and like Ryan Reynolds to be like, or Deadpool to be like, this is what they want, like it's fine, and like it bother Hugh Jackman like that he's like 5'4" or whatever. I think it'd just be funny just for that joke alone.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm nervous. I'm nervous as all get out about X-Men because I love them so much and what they've established in the MCU. And I mean, I know if anybody can do it, it's the higher ups at Marvel. But it's just a lot of what the X-Men stand for. I just don't know if I can be truly convinced in all of the universe that we've established already in the MCU that we could ever get up to a point where people that are different are truly hated and feared, like when we're already dealing with gods and demons and other timelines and all of this stuff being like legit, like, you know what I'm saying? Like if it was established as this other stuff was established, I could almost see it like being kind of plausible, but like we're already seeing like all of this craziness happen in the world, like knowing it's real. So it would be hard. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think it can be done. It's just going to be hard to really establish that hate and feared angle that has always kind of been.
I think there's ways to do that within the universe they've set up at this point without pulling them in from another multiverse. Because like for the long time, X-Men were trying to stay hidden.
Right.
So they're clearly starting to say that mutants do exist. So Ms. Marvel's a mutant. Namor's been around for hundreds of years.
Yep.
Spoiler alert if you haven't seen Black Panther yet.
Wait, he's dead?
No.
No, I'm joking.
Oh.
Black Panther's dead. I was
Um,
giving you, if you were going to spoil that Namor's a mutant, I was going to spoil that the Black Panther died and
Gotcha.
there's going to be a new one.
But they, clearly they're focusing on like the multiverse and like the Kang stuff is coming up. I like your little curly cues there.
I'm trying to curl them up a little bit. Trying to get there. But yeah.
They like, I'm okay with things being different from the comics as long as it's good storytelling.
Right with you.
Because Iron Man, they had to make changes. Captain America, they had to make, they have to make changes.
So yeah, I think that's one of the changes that they're going to have to realize. I hope that they realize we can't dig our heels into that, because did you see Miss Marvel TV show?
Mm-hmm.
Because even some of that being like, we're here to take you because you're super weird. I don't even remember. Like it was damage control at the end, being like they show up randomly at the end. That show had its own little like issues, even though like I genuinely liked her as an actress. I genuinely like how they tweaked the power set. Like I'm fine with a lot of it. And the show itself, if you look at it through the lens of who I think the show's for, which was not, 30 to 40 to 50-year-old men that can still enjoy it, but for the most part, like it's for kids, like it's for girls, it's for a different set of people. But overall, I just hope that they don't try to lean too much into that hate and feared angle, because it's a hard angle for me to buy when everything else is where it is.
Well, we've got time to develop before they bring them in, I think, fully into their own, because they've already announced what movies are coming out, and X-Men aren't in the next couple of years, so they've got time to start sowing the seeds.
Correct.
Maybe they've done it with newscasters and stuff before, and I'm not trying to bring up a bunch of political stuff here at the end, but like they could easily set up someone being like a fear hate monger radio show host or podcast host that is, like all these things are happening, we've got to blame somebody. And you could go down the witch hunt thing where like, oh, mutants are big, that's the new thing, we're going to blame them. And then because so many people have had so much trauma between Endgame and whatever they bring the X-Men in,
well, and they could,
and that's probably
that is a good angle, because they could use that as and the root of it could be, it's because of these Avengers and because of the Guardians and because of what they've brought to us, just like Namor said in the movie, like, you opened up this can, whereas in this news broadcaster type would be like, okay, you heroes and you otherworldly beings have opened up this can, which is now the establishment of mutants.
Because they sowed the seeds of that little bit in the end of the first Avengers movie, when they have the news broadcast, everybody's like, yeah, these guys are great, they saved my life. And then there's other people who are like, no, I don't think they should be out here. Like, who are they to do? So like they had that, then they had the Sokovia Accords and like all this stuff, like they could develop that. Because like, just like in our world, we kind of all came together after 9/11 in the States, and look at where we are now, 20 years later. You've got the world comes together after the events of Endgame. Oh, all the suffering, everybody's back. I mean, we saw that some in Falcon Winter Soldier, which I really like that series, but that's a whole nother conversation. But it'd be easy to kind of go, yeah.
How'd you like that Easter egg present that Nebula gave to Rocket for Christmas?
Oh, yeah.
Just fun.
That was great. Yeah. Just the tears in his eyes.
I thought obviously it'd be I mean, you think of it a certain way, and it's always hindsight's 2020. But like I said to my wife, I'm like, could you imagine a post-credit scene with him waking up the next day and like, he can't put that on. Like, and he's just like, what the heck? Wake up in the
Oh
morning
man.
to put your arm on and it's gone.
That's
I recommend that special. It was, I didn't know what to expect, and people said it was fun, but like sometimes things are just supposed to be fun like that. Like sometimes it's just supposed to be a good,
yeah.
hardly nothing to a plot, but like give me 40 minutes of just
Yeah.
a fun little movie.
And of any of the characters they've done in live action, to pull that off and still be sincere and genuine, because I'm going to be completely honest. I think we talked about some of this a little bit, but Multiverse of Madness and Thor Love and Thunder are the movies that made me really question how much trust I had in the Marvel movies going forward. I think Black Wakanda Forever has really helped re-solidify that. But I feel like those two movies were really shaky for me.
Yeah.
But Guardians of the Galaxy has done that since the first movie. They've had the fun and the really bizarre goofiness, but then they've also had a really strong heart and core in it. And I think that's something James Gunn is really good at, because I didn't know how they were going to pull off Peacemaker as a show, because I hated that character so much in that movie.
Yeah.
Like, why would I want to watch a show about this guy? And the way they played it out, I was like, well done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, the Christmas special was great. Just I have a couple little nitpicky things, but it's like really minor. It's definitely not I wouldn't say it's definitely not for little kids.
No.
It's just because like they're in the bar, they're getting like drunk, they're like brainwashing people.
Yeah.
They're fighting cops who aren't. It's not like the bad, oppressive cops. It's just people who are responding to like a man afraid of getting kidnapped.
Yeah.
There's like, it's and when they started it off with the Fairy Tale of New York, I was like, oh, well, I know what lyrics they're not going to play from this song, but like, I'm surprised they went there with this song on Disney Plus.
Yeah. And again, some people like that, like, we were talking about different directors, like, Bryan Singer and Vaughn and these other guys and Reeves. Like, you look at somebody like James Gunn that, like, he might not know the characters fully, but you could tell he's willing, and he's willing to, like, you could tell, like I didn't care for the movies or the Suicide Squad movie very much, but all in all, you could tell that that's a director that is willing, like, just overall willing to listen. Like, you could tell with Guardians of the Galaxy, that's a director that's willing to, like, and again, we've talked about it with Thor. Like, you have somebody like Love and Thunder, where there still needs to be a little bit of this. Like, yes, like, we like the creativity, but there still needs to be that kind of that pullback where you need to have that tension, where you can see with Love and Thunder, when that tension isn't there, who are we making the movie for? But yeah, I definitely I'm not a huge DC guy in general, but like, I've heard good things about Peacemaker, so I gave it a shot, and I'm like, yeah, I will watch. Like, this is genuinely enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a completely another conversation, but it's just so weird how, for some odd reason, some of these random villains for DC, like Black Adam, like, where they seem to like have more success than like just standard like heroes that like you think they'd be able to just knock it out of the park with, but they just could never really find the footing on it.
Because, well, yeah, you said that's a whole conversation for another day, but my thought is a lot of DC's heroes, I like them, but they don't fit, or they have not fully been able to adapt them to like a modern culture.
Sure. I can see that.
Like Superman. I love Superman. The whole representing hope and, being like an ideal to look up to, not necessarily like the one who's going to save, but like, I like things about him, but the way they did him in the last movies, I think Cavill is great as Clark Kent and Superman, but they just wrote such dark, depressing stories for him that it didn't get to see what Superman really is.
Well,
And
and that comes down to, again, the directing and the producing, where you have a character that, in my opinion, they don't believe in that character. Like the
right,
people that are making those movies, they don't believe in that character. Like the whole Justice League series and movies and this whole past 10, 15 years has proved is that, like, they see Batman made money. Okay, what is Batman? Okay, let's make everything like that. And it wasn't until recently where, like, or the original Wonder Woman came out, where, like, they realized, like, wait a minute, like, there's we can just tell. And, like, the first Wonder Woman movie, like, I loved it. Like, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed the actress, I enjoyed the plot, everything. And it didn't need to be through that lens of, like, through that Batman lens that they felt
well,
like they had to put
right.
on Superman.
Like Wonder Woman was able to be dark and gritty because it was World War One. Like
Right, right,
that
right.
that setting. And Curtis is mentioning Batman can be more modern. Gotham. Do you mean Gotham the show? Because I did not watch Gotham the show, but I did like the new The Batman. Like I thought that was a way to, like, he was still dark and brooding in a very gritty world, but I felt like he felt more like a version of the comic book him than just a man with technology.
I'll take, and I'll say this till the day I die. You give me Batman in Gotham City as a series of movies or TV shows, just give that to me. I don't want Superman in that world. I don't want anybody else in that world, because I have always thought that Batman is a Marvel character stuck in a DC universe. Like, that's just as far as the writing and as far as, like, the characterization has always been. Like, I feel like he's stuck in that universe of the gods and everything, and that's why people like him. But at the end of the day, they write him like a god because he's a human. So they always write him like, oh well. And that's been my biggest pet peeve, where they made him like this Mary Sue, where, like, after a wonderful story arc and a wonderful crazy plot and everything, like, at the end, guess what? Like, they're like, Batman stood over there and he says, I knew that was going to happen and I could have beat X, Y, and Z. And they always turned it into that, where, because
Mm.
he's human, they want to write him as the most powerful. So then that's their way of doing it. And but yeah, Ryan Pattinson, maybe what's his name?
Robert
Pattinson.
Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson. Enjoyed that movie a lot. I enjoyed it for what it was. And, like, you give me that, but then you, like, give me Justice League, and there's just such a contrast in characters, where, like, Marvel MCU, they've done such a good job at, like, there's a contrast of characters, but, like, the Marvel palette, the palette that they chose, yeah, it's pretty standard. But
Mm-hmm.
Justice League decided to give you the Batman palette right away, and, like, it messes everything up, because, and, like, I talked to Travis, I think, about this, like, eventually, aren't you going to want Shazam versus Black Adam? Like, if you've seen both of those movies, that's going to be hard for you to even, like, comprehend visually, like, those two characters and those two worlds, because those two movies don't even seem like they're in the same universe whatsoever. Not only color palette, but style of writing, style of characters, and
Okay.
everything like that. Um, but yeah, Wonder Woman, freaking, I'm down. I'm down with her.
I loved Wonder Woman. I loved Aquaman. I like Cavill as Superman. I actually liked Ben Affleck as Batman. Again, I
Yeah,
didn't like the storyline so much. I loved Shazam. I haven't seen Black Adam yet. I liked the second Suicide Squad a lot more.
than the first.
Yeah, and I feel like that one. See, I think other Marvel is a. I think they're good at setting up boundaries for the most part, movies going in, and this is just my outside observation. And they've got specific things, but I think with Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, and Love and Thunder, they let those directors be more of themselves with those movies than any of the other Marvel movies. And I think for me, that hurt those movies because, like you said, there was no one pulling them back. Whereas with DC, I feel like DC they're controlling everything so much that, especially like that first Suicide Squad movie, it was such a committee edit. Like when I read something, I don't know how accurate it is about what the director intended to do and what it came out to be. That
Yeah, people
yeah,
are still people are still people are still trying to petition for the original cut of that first Suicide Squad because I guess it's a lot, and I could assume because it felt so spliced.
Mm,
I mean, you could definitely even talk about. I know people are going to hate me for saying it, but like, I do think there's a Trank version of Fantastic Four that is probably not that bad of a movie. But if you watch that movie for what it is now, every other couple scenes, Sue has this wig on, and my wife, she used to be a hairdresser for 20 years, and so wigs for her in movies like drive her nuts. So we're watching Fantastic Four, and like every other couple scenes, there's like a new edit where it's like her in this wig, and it makes the movie go like this, where like the scenes where she's in with her regular hair, you like just try to splice together and you're like, this probably could have been like, it might not have been a superhero movie, but it probably could have been a cool science fiction movie.
yeah,
Um,
I
where
think you're right. I think there would have been a better movie in there if he had been able to complete it. I don't know if it would have been a good Fantastic Four movie.
Completely, it would have been his version again, where we
Yeah,
talk about like their versions. It would have been his version of Fantastic Four, which isn't the Marvel's first family and any of that stuff.
right.
Um, it would have been just like a weird science fiction superhero movie. But after the success of Avengers, and what I heard was that when they went back and did all the edits, and then like the whole last scene of, have you seen it?
At once, yeah,
Yeah, the whole last scene where it's like you can tell it's just all CGI green screen, light in the sky, versus Doctor Doom sort of battle, where all of that was just added for this final cut because if they were like, no, we need to turn this into a superhero movie, and so that kind of just made it, mucky. Um, but yeah, I'm always curious about those edits where like, when you make money off that, like drop that, like they did. Obviously, they fought for the Justice League one, and I watched that one, and yeah, it's a much better movie because you have all the missing pieces that like weren't in the original cut.
I I don't know if I agree with that personally. I think there are better parts in that than what we got. Um, I still like the things I like in that were the expanded plot for Cyborg. I think
Helpful
that was really huge, and
because
I thought that was really
he was a main part of the overall plot with the cube itself.
yeah, yeah. Which that I really liked that. But yeah, that's a whole nother man. I can't. We're at 3 hours. This is my longest episode ever.
Got it.
um, but
We'll talk about that some other time. But X-Men,
yeah, yeah.
X-Men.
But yeah, I'm hopeful for what MCU could do. But I'm more apprehensive than I was last year because of the other movies that came out this summer.
I think they're finding their footing. I think with Ant-Man and the Wasp coming, and after this Wakanda Forever, I think that we're going to start finding our foot. I think that it's taken. I don't know if this is technically phase 3 of the TV shows. I think definitely the TV shows being what they were, it felt different because obviously the first couple phases are just phases through movies. I mean, they even tried with the TV show. I can't even
Agents of Shield.
Yeah, they tried with that, like thinking, oh, can we do this with TV show, and can we interweave this? And even at that point, they were like, no, we can't. It's impossible. So we've gotten our timeline through movies, and now we're getting our timeline through TV shows as well. And so it's gonna the palette's gonna feel a little bit different in that sense. But
Yeah,
I do think with Wakanda Forever and with what I've seen with Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think that and with Loki and even Winter Soldier, um, I think that they're establishing something. And I enjoyed She-Hulk as well for what it was. She-Hulk actually felt the most MCU-ish to me,
yeah.
as of recent days.
I'm wondering if, and again, this could be a thing that when we get further down the road, we see like all the pieces fall into place. Oh, there's a reason Love and Thunder was so goofy and why it didn't quite feel as serious, because you had No Way Home, which was a very emotional movie. I mean, it's action-packed superhero movie, but it was a lot of emotions, at least was for me.
Yep.
And then you go into Multiverse of Madness, which had emotion, but it was also weird for me.
Yeah.
And then you had Love and Thunder and She-Hulk. So you have these like really kind of funny, wacky stories.
Yep.
And then the next thing out, Wakanda Forever, is a really powerful, strong, emotional movie. So it's like, all right, maybe there's something here, a method to the madness. We'll see when this other stuff starts to play out. And like Loki, goofy and weird, but also had a really strong, I think, current of seriousness through it.
Yeah.
So it'll be really, and of course, WandaVision was all emotion, heavy. So yeah, I'm trying not to be too harsh on Multiverse of Madness and Love and Thunder until I see where the phases end up. But
sure. Well,
walking out of them, they were the least enjoyable MCU movies for me.
Right. And for a lot, like you said, though, like those two could be argued as and I honestly, I would even throw Eternals in this phrase. Those three for me could be the least connected per director choice, like through that director lens. Like even Eternals, like for everything it was, that like I didn't enjoy it very much. Like again, director, like I'm glad that they're not connected, or they're. It's almost like that's the one for sure that they've like kind of swept under the rug as far as like anything interwoven in the MCU, as far as just blatantly said, because it's like, okay, well, because in a normal MCU conversation, people are like, well, what about this? How does this relate to that? Like that's the normal conversation. You hear nobody saying that about the Eternals. Like, how does this relate to that?
Yeah, there's that little tidbit in She-Hulk where they're like, what is this giant man coming out of the ocean on one of the blog sites or whatever, and there's a reference to Wolverine in there as well.
Yep.
I personally really liked Eternals. I have no real attachment to those characters, but
I liked it, but they didn't. There's no real connective tissue,
right? It's
outside of setting up like Black Knight. I mean, essentially, there was no real connective tissue to really anything in depth. I mean, at least yet, or we'll wait to see.
I mean, at least they gave us an explanation as to why they did.
Right.
So, I'm really just curious to see how and when those characters come back into play down the road. But yeah, there was some. I really enjoyed that movie.
And if
I 100% agree, it's definitely one of the least connected,
right,
things.
Well, it was a beautifully made movie. There's just some pieces of it that, I mean, that's again another conversation. But I just hope I hope they find the right actors for X-Men, and they bring in some talent, because I've been waiting. I mean, you've seen Wakanda Forever. Namor going into Wakanda, and that scene, as far as visually, like what they did with him, for me, easily top 5 Marvel battle or visual scenes for me. Just the way they made him fly and the way they used him, like the fact that they didn't shy away from the because I remember even 20 years ago or 10 years ago, people were like, they're never going to do Namor. They're never going to do him right. He's got these stupid wings. He's got no one. He's in a little Speedo, blah, 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 blah. Like, but that scene, and then me just thinking about the X-Men, I'm just like, I can't wait,
Yeah. And I think now with MCU the way it is, I don't think they're going to shy away from the colorful costumes.
Right.
They might not be 100% comic book accurate. But I think they'll give us, good interpretations.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll do like they do with the other movies, anytime they can take the mask or the helmet off, they will. That's just, because they're paying for the actor's face, and I kind of hate that, but
right.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, that scene was great. I remember seeing the trailer and thinking that he looked goofy flying on my TV. I was like, man, that CG looks so janky. And I was like, man, I hope when it actually hits the big screen, it looks better, and it looks so much better on the big screen.
He does this like turn, like this pivot,
where he
and
kind of hops and turns. Yeah, it just felt the physics of it didn't feel right. But I'm like, what would a man with flying feet feel like?
Well, and so I'll relate it to I one of my characters. It reminded me of not exactly how he flies, but the physics of it is that like I've always liked. I have a character named Windrush in Modern Wonders. He hasn't been in a book yet, but I absolutely loved the way Jack Frost in Guardians of the, what is it called?
I know, I haven't seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
Wonderful movie, highly recommend it. Animated movie. It's got Jack Frost, Santa Claus, Tooth Fairy, all these in there.
Mm-hmm.
But they make him fly. He doesn't really fly. He just, the wind takes him. And so he's like weightless like that. So sort of like thinking about Legolas like on the snow.
Okay.
And then thinking about him flying, Rise of the Guardians. Where Jack Frost, he just like kind of jumps and the wind just like pulls him. And so the physics of it, you stop and you're like, wait a minute, like that doesn't look natural, but there's something about it that looks cool. And so even when like Namor, he like he sort of like stops like a snowboarder to like come back the other way with his feet, and they show that, I'm just like, give me the X-Men, like give me a Sentinel and give me Wolverine being thrown by Colossus, give me Nightcrawler like crawling up the arm of him, like because even what was it? I think Spider-Man on Ant-Man in Civil War, he's crawling around on Giant Man, and I'm like, okay, I can't wait to see Nightcrawler crawl across the Sentinel, like what I mean?
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Yeah, when I saw it on the trailer, it was a couple months out, so I was like, all right, it's probably not a fully finished moment yet, because I know CG is not always 100%.
Right.
Or they might even misdirect, like Endgame. They misdirected so much with those trailers. But when I saw the last Terminator movie, which I generally liked, but the Terminator that like the guy that's coming after them in the factory or whatever, some of the parts where he's jumping more than a human can, like the weight of the physics felt off, and that's what that Namor looked to me in that initial trailer. I'm like, oh, that's gonna take me out. But like, I think it was after the scene had passed, I'm like, oh, I didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
When I was watching it, but yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
And I'll say one more thing about that movie. Angela Bassett was phenomenal. Like, I have never been so captivated by her performances in a movie. Not that she's a bad actress, but like, I just could not pull my eyes away from her in that movie.
Yeah, no, she was very much a highlight for me as well.
Well, Curtis is saying he wants to see whose energy runs out first. I don't know if my energy is running out, but I know I'm going to have to go to sleep because I have an appointment in the morning.
Yep. I got work too in the morning. I might, I don't think I'm going to make it to basketball in the morning, but I do have work. So no, I appreciate you having me on it. I know you are an X-Men lover, and I couldn't deny some X-Men talk. So I appreciate you having me on. And like I said, I'll send you a picture or a link to picture the toys, and then also the survey for my stuff. But
and I'll add them in the description on this video once you send them to me.
Do you have a page for this specific podcast, or do you just share it on your normal stuff?
I just share it on my Instagram and Facebook. I mean, I could put it on. I have a blog page, but it doesn't have a lot of like. That's more for me at my like my custom stuff to like put my bios and stories out on at this point.
Yeah.
But
cool.
But anybody watching this, if you want, I'll put the description, or in the description, I'll put those links once I get them to check out the Armies of Ashmore and the from the Defenders of Eden comic book. Which, where can people still get these currently?
Yeah.
Okay.
Email or text me or
okay.
Message me. I can send them out. I can have my wife ship them.
Okay. Excellent. Well, Matt, if you want to, I'm going to bump you out here in a second and say goodnight to everybody, but thank you so much for joining me.
No, thank you. I
I really
appreciate
had
it.
a lot of fun. Like I said, 3 hours and 15 minutes. This is
Yes.
definitely my longest episode.
Eat that,
And it
gooch.
did not. Yeah, I think he tapped out in like an hour and 35. No, he.
Oh, that gooch can't talk too long, huh?
Oh, thank you very much. And
Thank
hang
you
on
for
one
having me,
second. And I'll say goodbye to you a sec. But thank you very
awesome.
much.
Appreciate it. See you, Curtis.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining in. For those of you that hung around for the entire video, thank you so much for being here and interacting. I know there was a lot of comments I didn't get to reference and everything, so I apologize. But yeah, this was a great conversation. It was really fun. As much as I love talking Mythic Legions, I do like talking about other stuff as well. So yeah, I'll put those links in the description for this video so you can check out Matt's stuff. Yeah, so that's all I'll have for today. Like I said, next week I will have a show Saturday night and Sunday night, 2 different people, all new guests. Thanks so much for stopping by. I'll make those announcements later this week. And yeah. All right. Have a great weekend. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. As always, what's on your shelf?